All right, this week's episode is with Eric Moreira. He is a hunter I've seen on social media pages. Someone I've never met before. He reached out recently, and he thought that the 6-point buck that I killed this year he might have had sheds of. Turns out it was a different buck, but we started talking, and he's just one of those dudes who's super dedicated to hunting. He lives it and breathes it. He's in the woods as many hours as he can be, as possible. He's a big time shed hunter. We talk a lot about shed hunting. He's very successful at shed hunting. He's got, I don't know how many towns, he'll mention it in the podcast. He's got 12 or 13 towns that he shed hunts, and he's got his go-to spots. Been doing it for 20 years. So we talk about his strategies on shed hunting, how you can better find sheds, and just some really cool stories. He's got a lot of nice bone that he brought with him to the podcast as well. So there's a little bit of show and tell there, telling a couple stories out of the gate. And then, of course, we talk about bow hunting and strategies to kill mature bucks as well. So there's a little bit of everything in this one for you guys. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks again for listening. Here is Eric Moreira. All right, we got another episode of Hunt Suburbia. We're in the garage studio again. Got to deal with that every once in a while, especially with new baby in the house.
Absolutely.
And I'm joined by Eric Moreira. First time on the pod. He brought a lot of bone with him. Why don't we start out and go right into, what's the story behind this giant bone that you brought?
Well, we just found that one dead last year while going through the woods. Let's see. I didn't know that there was anything in there anyways. I didn't actually think that there would be any bone there because I figured it'd be mostly picked out by this point. You know what I mean? It was because it was late in the season. And I just said, let's go for a walk. And had a buddy of mine, Pat, with me, and we just went for a walk. And lo and behold, I walked up on it.
What time of year did you get that?
That was in April.
In April. And it doesn't look like it had any at all chew marks.
Not at all.
That's insane. Was he in a swamp or something?
He was in a swamp for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was definitely trying to escape, I think, the type of route that he was on.
Yeah.
Was definitely a run that doesn't end well for him if he was alive and running around, you know?
Yeah. So the story, somebody shot him and couldn't find him.
Yeah, I think somebody shot him. I was contacted by somebody, and they surely think that they shot it.
Just a beast, man. And
Just
then what's that
unique.
there?
And that looks like how somebody shot him a year before.
straight in the head?
Straight in the skull. I mean, definitely you could probably see why the deer would probably rattle someone's cage.
Yeah.
And have a shot like that happen, but hey, it happens.
Yeah.
It happens to the best of us.
Oh, yeah. Is that your best deadhead you ever found?
No.
No?
No, I have a couple that are bigger than that, yeah. But definitely the most unique, I would say.
Yep.
I do like the bladed tines.
Giant mass. And the broadhead hole in his skull.
Broadhead hole in his skull. I'm not sure how that didn't kill him that year, to be honest with you. I mean, that's a pretty devastating blow, I would think.
You can see, he showed me from the inside, you can see, it actually penetrated in to the brain cavity at least. I mean, Absolutely. I don't know how much of his brain it got.
I don't know how much it could have, it obviously didn't hamper him all too much because he did grow naturally. I mean, he's got some great mass, but that's a pretty neat one.
Yeah, it is. And we're going to talk some shed hunting. We're going to talk bow hunting strategies, all that stuff. But let's we got these here too. Why don't you tell this quick story too? Did you find a couple of bucks locked up there?
Yeah, I was actually standing on top of these the year before with 4 feet of snow on the ground. And I didn't know that they were there.
Were the whole bodies still there or just the heads at that
point?
Both,
well, at that point they were all there and attached. There was a ton of coyote tracks everywhere, but I was wearing snowshoes and can only do so much going in and coming out with snowshoes on.
Yeah.
And I went back the next year, and I had walked in. I found a leg bone. I was like, for sure, there's a den around here. Went another 50 yards, found another leg bone, and I went, that kind of looked like the same leg bone. I walked back, and I realized it were two of the same bones. And then I started looking around, and all I thought it was a giant non-typical shed or something like that, because I could see the tangle. I saw it about 60 yards away and walked over to it, and there they were, buried in the mud.
You know what's interesting, too, is what I didn't realize until just now, but how do they get tangled up backwards like that?
Well, I was wondering the same thing.
You'd think they'd be fighting, right? And maybe they did, and I don't know. But you got to put on your investigator hat to figure that one out.
It was kind of down a little swamp hole, but there was a very vertical hill that was right next to it.
Yep.
And what we were thinking was the only way that he could enter that is if that rack entered it backwards. So the larger one was pushing that one uphill and actually got under him and lifted him over. And he fell into it backwards.
Ah.
That's the only way. That's the only way you could possibly.
That's crazy.
Imagine that. I mean, you look from the wear on, from these two,
flipped him up like that.
Yeah.
And he.
Just think about him being backwards and pointing in opposite directions. The struggle that takes place, for survival at that point is pretty intense.
Yep. I mean, you even said you can see here. I don't know if you guys will be able to see on the video, but you got regular antler here, right, and then worn down to shit there.
I mean,
on the back here too, you can feel it's flat there. So they were. I mean,
it's a struggle for survival at that point.
For what? Probably 20 hours to wear down like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Crazy.
I mean, it's pretty insane. There's actual dents from each antler in each one of these racks, and I mean, you look at the condition of the skulls. You couldn't do that if you wanted to.
Yep.
With skulls that frail.
No.
And it's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's a cool find, man. But that's the kind of stuff you come across when you're just always in the woods.
That's right.
Every once in a while, you're gonna find some cool shit like
Absolutely.
that video I got last year in the sanctuary of that buck on the ice. Did you ever see that video?
Yeah, I did see that.
Bleeding out from the coyote attack.
That's crazy.
Yep. I mean, you'd never think you'd come across something like that, but
that's crazy.
Just kind of happened across it if you're spending enough time in the woods.
Absolutely. I've seen a lot, a lot of where coyotes will take everything but the head. And that's the only thing that's left behind. So if you find a spine or something like that, you're doing your circle, trying to get your grid a little larger.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you can't find it and you don't know why.
Yep.
And that's because that's the only thing that's left behind.
Yeah. Whenever I see a fresh bone, you can tell, like, oh, it's a coyote or something. It was Absolutely. A recent kill, just one bone.
That's right.
And for new people listening to this, whatever, and want to find more antlers, always look around until you can find a skull, because the skull's it's not like the skull's going to be a mile away. That skull's usually within 200 yards and usually much closer to
Good number, yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
just look, because you never know. It might be a dead head. It might be two dead heads.
Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's how I found
as far as they scatter, the way that the coyotes will scatter the bones. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. But train your eye just to see any bone, not necessarily just looking for antler, because a bone can lead to a nice, awesome find.
Absolutely. I'm surprised that I didn't find anything from this one prior to it. I didn't find any hair. I didn't find anything.
Well, when you're
I looked over and I saw this sticking up on the other side of a log.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that looks like bone.
Yeah.
It was. That's one thing that, especially when you're out there shed hunting, a log can hide a lot. A lot of people don't think about that, but a log can hide a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've had it hide some incredible sheds where I'm like, how did the shed even get under there in the first place?
Yep.
And you got to wonder. But
I think, because I've been trained to look for it, and I haven't found any yet, but when the deer jumps over anything, it's going to jump over. That can trigger him to lose his antler, right? So if he's going up and over, he has to get over that log. It's landing. It can fall off, and shit can ricochet under the
I've
log pretty
probably
easy.
only found about 2 or 3, like one on the other side of a river and then another one on
Yeah.
the other side of a stone
Rock
wall.
walls, yeah. I found a couple on rock walls just looking that way.
Yeah.
I always will walk up the edge of a rock wall.
Absolutely.
And look for the little breaks and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
found a couple little ones, but I seem to find a lot of little ones, which are harder to find.
Yeah,
Than the big
well,
ones.
that means that you're doing it right, though.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly what that means,
Yeah.
because, the slower you go, you're going to find the smaller ones.
Yeah.
I look at some of the areas that I've looked at so far this year, and the fluff is 2 feet deep. I'm not going to find a small shed in that. Now I have to wait and hope for snow to push it down so that it pokes up those tips so I can see them.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'm probably not going to find it until a coyote drags it out.
Yep.
Because coyotes, just like a dog, they're going to go to an antler, they're going to grab it, they'll walk away with it. If it's too big and it pokes them in the head when they when they pick it up, they may let it go. I mean, that's
I went for a quick walk today looking for one. There's a palmated buck around that I got some video of him in the rut. I went to go check a camera, and I played around with him, snort wheezed at him and stuff. It was in an unhuntable place. I just have a camera in there. And I went in, and he we had a really cool experience. I'll show you the video after. But I know that he dropped. So I went looking today for 2 hours. I tried to go out for like two hours, get a whole bunch of work done, and then go out and poke around for 2.
exactly.
And a guy comes, a guy's coming through. He's walking 8 or 9 dogs with him. Ugh. And I'm just thinking, this guy, and I've seen him in there before, and I was like, the freaking dogs probably, just the regular dogs who don't know nothing about shed hunting they're probably picking up antlers all the time.
Yep,
Those places,
absolutely.
Those places where they're getting walked constantly and they're letting them roam, and they bring it back, and some guy has no idea what hunting is, doesn't really care about the antler, probably like, oh, that's cool. That palmy, I've walked everywhere. I haven't found either side. It's because there's so many dogs.
There's also another thing is, like you or I, myself, whatever, who are most people, if they find a place that has a lot of walking trails, they're not going to go there. Mm-hmm. Or they're going to breeze through there, and they're just going to be like, oh, there's too many people around.
Yeah.
It's one of the best areas to find them.
Yeah. It's all there is around me anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I've found so many of them walking on those trails to get to a spot where I want to go to.
Yep.
My collection is probably 95% public land that anybody can walk on.
Oh, me too. That's all.
You know what I mean?
I don't have permission anywhere. It's all 100%.
And it's the private property seems to be the ones that get beat up. I mean,
yeah,
they get beat up first, and it's not so much that people are antsy, but they think that it's greener on the other side.
Yeah.
And it's not exactly the way it works, I mean, if you put your effort into state land, the rewards are incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some big rewards out there if you work hard for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just talking with Todd Mead. He's an Adirondack hunter, and he's a really good bow hunter too, but he's been going to the Midwest quite a bit, and we were talking about that, how it's kind of flipping now.
Absolutely.
Where but it will go in cycles, because now public land, because of the hunting public and because of content creators and stuff that are putting content out about hunting public, and they can see all these big deer that are available out there. Now everybody is starting to go to public, and it might push back into, well, maybe you got to find a private piece here.
Right. It's nice to be near,
yeah,
those areas that you can hunt legally, and then other areas that there's just so much private that they don't want anybody in there.
Yep.
And I mean, we have an explosion of the population going on right now. I think we are on a steep incline. Mm-hmm. And you kind of blame it a little bit on some of these towns that don't allow hunting. That they're harboring the deer in those towns and those areas, and then that becomes a high concentration area. And then it's hard to eradicate that once it begins. But now, I mean, think about it. I strongly feel that we live in a perfect environment for them. Okay, deer feed on edges. We have nothing but edges.
Yeah.
Our roads are all rounds, curves, all different shapes.
Yep.
Other parts of the country, they use a square of land and then use another square of land.
Yeah.
And they try to keep as much open as possible. Around here, we don't have that opportunity. And we have a lot of old places which are all built on high ground. And I mean, it's a pretty diverse area. It's not an easy area to shed hunt. Or hunt, either way, no matter how you want to look at it. But if you can get yourself a nice spot, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, when I first moved, I've been in Massachusetts for 10 or 11, 12 years now, but living in the city until I bought this place in 2019. And I was like, I should start to learn how to hunt around here, because in my mindset, I'm a Vermont hunter. I've got a deer camp there, all the traditions there. I'm going to hunt out of my camp the rest of my life, and that's my hunting, right?
Right.
So I was like, no, I need to learn how to. COVID really, I was home for 2 years straight, and I was like, I'm going to learn bow hunting in the suburbs, so that I can hunt around here. And
Exactly.
It was insane to see the difference in deer population, mature buck population, just sightings,
Right.
sign from where I hunt in Vermont to here. We have it pretty good right now.
Absolutely,
in Massachusetts, and
we do.
The suburban hunting is really cool. I enjoy all kinds of hunting. I love big woods. I was in the big woods yesterday with Pat Burns. We're looking for a really, really big buck that we've got a couple of tips on. It's a giant deer. We're looking for his sheds out in big woods. I mean, I love all kinds of hunting, but it is super cool, the suburban edge hunting that we have here.
Yeah, I always thought of it as, a lot of people, they go away. Even you've gone away, hunting in a lot of places. A lot of other people do. I really don't. And I always said to myself that if I couldn't kill a big deer right here, where I live, where I have spending the most amount of time, there's no reason for me to go out of state. And now that I've looked at it, here 25, 30 years later, I look at it, say, now I would probably take a crack at going, out of state.
Well, that's what Todd Mead was saying. He's like, look, I killed a mature buck in the Adirondacks 10 years in a row, and it's a really hard place to do that. And once I figured out that, I can do that, what the hell? Why not?
Why not
go to Iowa,
Absolutely.
Kansas, Illinois, whatever, and shoot a bow? He loves bow hunting. He was killing a lot of his deer with a gun in the Adirondacks, right?
Yep.
But yeah, you have nothing else to prove. If you can consistently kill a mature buck in the Northeast,
absolutely.
Granted,
the odds are rising.
Yeah, but it's not like you're one of those guys who you walk into a trophy room and you're like, oh wow, those are all beautiful bucks, and the guy says they're all Kansas or Iowa.
Right.
Then then that kind of like, you're like, oh, that's cool. It is. There's a lot more of them out there, but have you killed?
They're treated like livestock out there now.
Yeah. And have you killed anything like that in the Northeast? Because if you've done that, then who the hell cares, man? Go out to Iowa, put a couple of those on the wall too.
Exactly, right? I mean, at that point, that would be the goal.
Yeah.
But now, I think we're on the up and up. I think that things can only get better.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
My buddy Scotland keeps saying, he goes, Pat, because I'll send him videos, and like seeing something like this to him is insane. He's Vermont,
right.
He's up in Vermont too, hunting there, and he just doesn't believe that these things are walking around, even like these guys, not let alone this beast,
Right.
And he goes, you guys must be in your heyday in Massachusetts and not even know it. Like, it's probably the best it's ever going to be, and you guys, there's going to be a steep decline at some point, He's like, there's no way it can be that good.
All right, so back in the 80s, hunting around here back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, there wasn't deer like this around. There wasn't this many deer around.
Yep.
Okay, and they avoided houses.
Yep.
To save their lives, right? Nope, they didn't go near houses. Now, they live in the houses. And that's the biggest problem now. Is now that they're in these smaller pieces, you just can't get them out. Just like you saying you're in Vermont. Well, a lot of people, they talk about tracking in the snow, right? That deer goes down, crosses a road, you're still following it. Around here, you're only moving it so far.
Yeah.
And then it's jumping into something private that it knows you can't get into, or it'll go right into the houses.
Yeah.
Now it gets to live for another year.
Yeah.
Where up in Vermont, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. It is a totally different game. And I was, again, this Todd Mead podcast coming out, it's just I did it 2 days ago, so it's fresh in my mind. But we were talking about where you can get into these battles with different groups of hunters, who will say that, it's easy where you hunt. Suburban hunting is easy compared to a big woods, tracking a buck or still hunting or any other scenario.
It's just as frustrating.
And you're playing, it's just different. Because,
Right.
like you said, it is very easy to bump a deer off of this tiny sliver that you're able to hunt it
Right.
into a place that you can't hunt
Now
it.
you can't touch it.
You can't touch it, and it's super. They're finicky that way.
Absolutely.
So you have to really. It's like you're studying it a little bit more. You're putting the deer under on a microscope and literally like doing an experiment on it and going, all right.
See, the thing is another thing around here is you can bump the deer, and they're just going to come right back. You know what I mean? It's if they're on a food source, you can bump that deer,
Yep.
and he's going to come back to that food
At some
source.
point. Yep.
They don't just all of a sudden they're gone for 2 weeks.
Right.
It's not like that.
Yep.
They will come through that area within the next few days because they don't have much other of a choice.
Yep.
They may avoid it by 100 yards, but
Yep.
they're coming back through that area. You know, so if you do find one and you stay on them, you know, you might get a shot at them.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you can definitely be more aggressive in the
Absolutely.
You
And
can be
scent
aggressive.
is not as big of a deal as, you know, it's made. The biggest thing is your footprints. You know, keep your footprints hidden. If you can keep your footprints hidden, you're fine. Your scent is not that big of a deal. I think most of the places that I hunt, I am legal distance away, but all I smell is dryers, food cooking.
Oh, I can smell
You know what I
Thai
mean?
food.
You know, the guy's got his grill going. You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden you're, you know, drooling in the stand, getting ready to, you know, oh, now I want a
So
hamburger
what-
when I get out. You know, it's just
What do you do on your boots then to keep your boots? What do you do? You spray Evercalm or just what do you do?
just a scent killer,
Yeah.
just a spray. That's all I use. And I have had a deer stop so fast that his rear legs came off the ground. And that was when I realized that I had a real problem. Because I was just sitting on the side of an opening and he was walking straight up and he hit the brakes so fast and I'm like, that is right where I crossed. He looked around, and then he took a right and just went up the other way.
Was that before you were using scent killer on your boots?
Well, this was when I dabbled and tried to figure out. It was probably about 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And then I realized that there is a real problem. You do have to scrub your boots down. That's the one, because that's the only thing you leave behind, is the scent that you leave
Yep.
down on the ground or on a tree branch or
Yep.
whatever. That's the only scent you really have to worry about. An airborne scent that's not at ground level is not as big of a threat. You know, definitely not. I've heard of people, a house that hunts nearby, right? Could you wash this shirt for me with your laundry? And had that help them
Yeah.
get a deer. Because they've taken that shirt and hung that shirt out a little bit further away from that house.
Yeah.
That deer still
Pushes them
smelt
out.
that and went around it.
Pushes them out a little further.
And it went around it just by leaving a shirt on the ground.
Yep.
And so you do have to play the wind 100%. I agree with
No,
that.
that's the only thing. Yeah.
But I can tell you that there's spots that I hunt that I give them my wind. And it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It really doesn't matter.
You're a smoker, right?
Yep.
Do you smoke in the stand?
Yep.
Yep. And
Yep.
does that hasn't you
Zero.
still kill you
Zero
kill a lot
effect.
of nice deer.
Zero effect.
Yep.
It's not what people think. You know, people used to smoke in their houses.
Yep.
People don't do that anymore. Anytime they smoke, they go outside. You know, so
That's an interesting point. So
it's
there's-
not a foul smell. So many jerks flick their cigarettes out the window. They smell it all the time. It's not offensive to them. You know,
especially where there's a lot of people. Maybe the big woods, it's a little different. But
big
when
woods
you're-
is 100%.
But when you're there,
anything downwind is
yeah,
dead.
when you're there, you're using a rifle
different.
most of the time anyway, and you're
And if you play the thermals well, and you know how to, and you understand how your thermals are working in your area,
Yep.
you can play that even to your, you know.
Yep.
That's the one thing is, you know, I see a lot of people that they do hunt, and they don't hunt it hard and beat the heck out of it to understand how the whole place works, so that they can come back next year and just say, I know you need to go hunt here.
yeah.
You know, a lot of people won't do that. And after 25 years of doing it the way that I've done it, now I could go over here and shoot one, I could go over there and shoot one.
Well, now you know you have all that muscle memory of where deer are at certain times of the year.
Absolutely.
Probably right. So you're like,
Absolutely.
and probably, oh, it's snowing today. I know what the deer do when it snows over in this spot, right? You have all
Absolutely.
that knowledge.
That's-
yeah. And that's super
huge.
Yeah.
It's
I'm on year
huge.
3, so year 3 hunting, around here. And so I'm just barely at the beginning of the learning curve of all that stuff, but it's already even helped just 3 years of knowledge.
Absolutely.
It's, you know where to
Absolutely.
go in certain
That,
situations.
that's the whole thing is, no matter where I hunt, it's like people, they won't hunt in high winds, right? Well, where I'm hunting, it's probably a 5 mile an hour wind because I have a large hill and I can go on either side of the hill. So I can get out of the wind no matter what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. And the deer are always down there in the calm weather. Whether it be harsh weather or whether it be warm weather.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're always going to be down there.
And they're always moving. They're moving in the high winds. And I love,
Absolutely.
when it's
Absolutely.
high wind, I love to be moving if I can too.
Absolutely.
Like,
You can walk up on some great animals.
Oh, yeah.
I've almost stepped on a couple of pretty darn big bucks, and I was like, because they'll let you get within 5-6 feet of them, and then they blow out of there, and then you're left sitting there going, what happened? Because you weren't paying attention.
Well, both of those bucks over that you've got the shed of one that was killed this year that we were talking about that I had pictures of, and really nice deer.
Absolutely.
I was hunting in extremely high winds one day, and I had still hunted most of the day, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna go back up into this piece because I'd walked all morning at like 2:00. I'm like, all right, deer have been coming down off of this hill every single evening. I've sat there, deer are coming down, and I know that buck was in the area like 4 days before. I'm like, I'm gonna go sit there. It's high wind, but whatever. I'll be able to sneak in there. They won't hear me, and maybe he'll walk by. I'm sitting there, and this is muzzleloader too. I got a muzzleloader, and I'm sitting there with a buddy who was filming me that day, and just for the YouTube channel. I'm sitting there with him, and I was like, whenever in days like this where you're just sitting and you're not seeing much, and whenever you find yourself getting discouraged, something I do in my head is I convince myself that right now there is a mature buck within 200 yards of us. Like right now there is, and of course it's
If you
not
don't
always
believe
true,
it,
but
it's not. If you don't believe that you could see a giant at any possible moment,
Yeah.
you have no business being out there,
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah. But it's a
You
good
know?
trick, dude. If you really are getting discouraged yourself,
Absolutely.
just go, no, there is one. I just can't see it. I can't hear it because it's windy. I can't, but there's one here, and it's probably making his way this way. So the funny thing is that day when we were on our way
gotta
out,
believe it.
I checked a camera on the way out that was at the bottom of the hill. It was only 60 yards away, but it was over this ledge.
Yeah.
We couldn't see it.
Yeah.
And that buck with the he walked by as about the time that I was telling him that there's a mature buck within 200 yards. There was
really
one
was
within
one.
60 yards.
Right.
But we just never heard him. It was super windy.
Absolutely.
And I was just sitting in the wrong spot.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to look. You have to believe that there's something there. I see a mistake that a lot of young guys make, and they put all this effort into trying to get in front of a big mature buck. Right? They're in the right area. They've got the right sign. Everything is there. Then opening day comes, and then they shoot a 4-pointer.
Mm-hmm.
And like, do you realize that you just killed the scout?
Yep.
Like that big buck was following that little buck.
Yep. It's very likely he was
And
way behind it.
That's just watching to see any reactions up ahead of him. And it's like, well, now you just destroyed all that work that you did.
Yep.
All the way up to that point. Like I won't shoot a doe early in the season.
Yep. Me either.
Okay, I will not do that, and it's not for the reason that most people think. And my problem is that if I'm going to shoot a doe, it's going to be for table fare, right? Well, I want the optimal conditions to be able to take care of that deer. I don't want to shoot it in the summertime. I have to cut it up early. I like to age my meat. So my father was a butcher when I was a kid growing up, so
Yep.
it was like I understand about that. But early in the year, I'm just not going to shoot at just old anything. If there's something that I'm interested in, maybe I will.
Yeah.
But I enjoy hunting.
Yeah,
It's not about
he
killing.
walks. If he walks by October 5th, you're shooting him.
I'm shooting him. Yeah.
And you're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah, I'm have to deal with that then.
Yeah.
But that's the if that was the position I put myself in, I guess that's what I have to do.
Yep.
But I'm not. I really truly enjoy hunting. I love challenging myself to get next to a big deer, and that's the hardest part. But that's what I like. I mean, like I said, back in the 80s when I started hunting, there was no trail cameras. You know, they had the little string attached to the
Tripwire.
little timer. You know what I mean? And we used to prop up sticks on trails and stuff like that to see if it got knocked down. And if it got knocked down, then we knew something came through there overnight.
Yeah, fawn.
You know, and yeah, exactly. It could have been a fawn. It could have been anything. But like something came through because it was truly hard to see a deer in the woods.
Yep.
You know, back then.
Yep.
And today it's not that hard because you see them driving through the neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
You see them driving in cities.
Yep.
You see them literally standing on the side of the highway with cars going by at 80 miles an hour, and it's eating.
Mm-hmm. I think
they've learned to live with us.
Inside this 495 loop, you know, that surrounds Boston. Inside that, there's tons of deer. There are
tons.
There's a lot of them.
Yep.
That's why I think shoot what you want to shoot for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But when you have a lot of deer around, you might as well. I've really enjoyed watching the young deer when I first moved in here in 2019. Some of those deer now that are mature and like it's super cool to keep tabs on them. Be like, wow, I remember when you were just a little tiny little forky, and now you're a split brow 3.5-year-old.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's cool to watch.
In one of my areas, actually, one of the things that happens is they tend to disappear around 2.5. So they'll stay around 1.5 years, 2.5, and then some will get shot, whatever. But they'll leave, and then I won't see them, and I'll think, hey, they're gone, and they'll show up 3 years later.
Yeah.
Just like the one that I shot this year. That was the same type of scenario. He hadn't been around for a couple of years. Then the previous year he showed up and he just had one big point, and that was it. And I'm like, oh man, I hope I see him next year. Didn't get him anything on early season, never got any pictures of him, nothing. And then all of a sudden, bang, he showed up. And then I actually had both of these cameras the day that I shot him, Thanksgiving morning. I had both my cameras went off, and those deer were coming in there. So I don't use cell cams. I don't use anything. There's a surveillance system on the property, but I don't use any of that. I use regular cameras with SD cards. It's a lot easier. I don't need the heartache of being at work and start getting.
That's true.
You know what I mean? I don't want that.
Yeah.
I learned to hunt without seeing. So it's like now that I do have decent trail cameras, and I do get footage, but that's not what I'm hunting. I see a lot of this younger generation, they really rely on, they're like, I'm not going in there unless I see this deer on camera.
Yeah.
Well, think about the fraction of woods that camera is covering. Mm-hmm. That is just such a tiny percentage of what woods you're actually in.
Yeah. Yeah,
you can't justify that.
When you're sitting in a stand that has a camera within eyesight, right? Like you probably have cameras within eyesight of your stands.
Yeah.
And when you're sitting in your stand, it's amazing. It's probably 80% of the deer that you see from your stand don't go by that camera.
Absolutely.
At all. So
and you can have multiple angles too. And it is so funny how I don't know if they go around and really pick them out that much, but they do have an uncanny ability after 3.5 to get through a piece of property and not touch a camera.
Yep. I agree.
It's amazing.
I agree that I think cameras can be a gift and a curse for people, and you can't rely 100% on them because it could make you hunt a place too. Like it's like, oh, I gotta go there now.
That's right.
But that buck could have been just passing through there at that point. And that was now 24 hours ago, and he's 3 miles later on the loop that he likes to do.
Yep.
You have to know. Like last year, I had a buck that was pretty much I have cameras all around, right? And I'd go check them, and I'd be like, I started to notice a pattern. Like, dude, this buck is hitting. He's on every one of my cameras, and I've got him like everywhere.
You've got him on the loop.
But he roams, and I was like, and then I would look at him, and I'm like, dude, he's here like once a week. He'll be back at this spot 7 days later, and then over here is like he's there once a week too. He literally was on like a week rotation, going everywhere.
How many miles do you think he went?
He was on
circle-wise.
It was probably like a 4 or 5 mile loop. For the suburbs, that's pretty big.
That's pretty good.
He's crossing lots of roads.
It's like they say on average, it's that 10-mile route, loop that they run. But
in the suburbs, it's probably a little different,
so
But he was crossing so many roads, and I was just like, how is this buck not killed yet?
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it, and then I killed him.
How visual they are.
Yeah.
Because they are very, very visual around here.
Yep.
I mean, these things it's amazing if I told you where I found most of my antlers, you probably wouldn't believe me, because that's how.
Have you found them in a trail, like in? Because that's
Oh, yeah.
that's another thing I think
Yep.
is like they're walking our trails all the time, the dog
Yep.
trails. They're like a lot of these bucks are probably just dropping right in the freaking trail.
I have seen you see in certain areas where they jump right on the walking trails,
Yeah.
and then they'll go,
They use those
40, 50
definitely
yards,
at
and
night.
then
They're
bounce
using
off.
those things
That's right.
a lot.
And yeah, I've found a couple, and you're like, how did nobody see this? How did nobody find this? How
Yeah.
is that even possible?
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, most people that are in the woods are blind to it.
Oh yeah. It takes a keen eye to find. Like Pat Burns was telling me the other day, it's like what he's trained his eye to do is just look for the sheen. It's like the sheen,
Absolutely.
the sheen and the color, as opposed to it's like
The color doesn't
I'm not looking
belong.
for a rack. I'm
Nope.
looking for
A little 2-inch piece.
this basic sheen and color.
I'm looking for a 2-inch piece of bone. That's what I'm looking for. A little 2-inch piece of bone. Because if you think small, I mean, you found a few sheds, so you kind of understand it, right? A big shed is small in the whole scheme of things
Right.
when you're out there and you're looking at it. I mean, you can see 30, 40 yards in front of you. There could be a 140 sitting there, and it's laying down and just curled up just a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you don't get the right angle on that,
Yeah.
you're not going to see it, and you're going to walk right by it anyways.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
because that's something I'll. Let's talk some shed hunting since it's shed season. You've already found 7 freshies.
Yeah.
I found one. It was a little spike, and all the other ones I found this year were little. Just it was this sticking up. They're a year old,
Yep.
buried under leaves, and
buried under the leaves.
finding that. Whereas once I get through a bunch of those, and if I know I'm against the clock, like yesterday, I'm like, all right, I don't have much time, and I got to get all the way over there where my car is in an hour. So now I'm gonna stop looking for these little ones, and I'm training my eyes now. Just look for the freaking big bone,
Yeah,
because
look
that's
for
gonna
large
stand
ones,
out,
yeah.
but it doesn't always stand out.
No, not at all. Not at all. Especially when you come at that angle. I mean, I've literally walked by them a foot and a half away, a foot and a half off the trail. But because of the sun and the way everything was, this thing was looking up at me this way.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Well, I walked into the area, it's a little too thick in there, so I had to turn around and come back out the same way. Well, I came back out and I'm like, like, is somebody messing with me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, no. And then I turned around and I looked at it because it was funny because I was looking into the light when I saw the shed. But the sun was behind me when I was going in, and I'm trying to use the sun to, see what's out in front of me. I try to pick my battles with the sun. Like, I'm a single father. I have my kids every other weekend. And so this whole time, it's been like a couple hours after work when I go out shed hunting.
Yeah.
So I have to use the conditions, and I have to use my time wisely.
Yep.
So when I go out there, I have to use those conditions
Whatever
to my
it's given you. Yep.
my optimal condition. When the sun gets low, that becomes difficult. So if you're only going out for a couple hours at the end of the day, you got to think about how you're going to attack that woods getting back to your truck.
Yeah.
Don't always think about just how you're going out or where you're going.
Oh yeah.
You have to think about how you're going to look. How's this going to look when you're coming backwards?
Oh yeah.
Because it looks very different.
That's constantly on my mind too. And it's also like you're like, all right, that's going to be a great area over there, but this ridge also is. I'm going to hit that on the way back to the car too. You're planning your route back.
Absolutely.
Like never walk back. Well, you can walk back the same one if you want, because like you said, sometimes you can
Oh,
find them. But
you eventually are going to need to backtrack yourself backwards.
I mean, even yesterday,
If you're doing it right, you are.
Yesterday, I found an old one, and it was buried. And it was in a very a place where if I lived on this property, this edge, it was out in Western Mass, not posted behind some farm fields. And I got in there. I'm like, oh, this looks pretty nice. And I looked down, and I could just see it's an old one. And cool, picked that up, and I'm filming it like here. Here's number six. And I walked off a little bit talking about it, and I turned back around, and on the way back, the other one was right there too, but it was buried, and of course they shed right next to each other a lot. But I didn't see it initially, even though it was only 6 feet away from this first one.
Yeah.
It was right there.
Yep.
But it took me walking away and then the angle coming back. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's actually one of those sets over there I found with the brow tine and the G2 are real close. That one there. I went over and I picked up the first one because it was when I came up over the hill, the antler just kind of stood up in front of me. And I'm like, oh, okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, all right, where's the other side now? My eyes instantly went over the other shed. So I didn't see the shed that was right in front of me.
Yeah.
So I actually walked up, looked at the edge, and went, all right, well, I turned around and came back, and I'm like, dummy, it's right there. And I've actually done that on a couple of sets that I do have. I've gone out, picked up one, off to the races, looking for the other side. You know what I mean? Start gridding, start
right
going
there.
nuts, right?
Yeah.
Turn around and go, man, I just, next day you go back and you're like, man, that thing's got to be here. So you go back to square one. There it is sitting right there. You're like, all right, so I just wasted the whole day when I could have just gone in there, picked them up, and walked out.
Yeah.
Because, when you've been doing it for long enough, you can know the knowledge of all these pieces of land. That's the biggest part of it. A lot of people miss all of that. Is that if you know all of the area in which you're hunting, shed hunting, whatever, you know all of this land, you can actually find them on a computer. Yeah, because I'll look into the sheds and say, all right, I know that they're on this. I know that exists right over here. Now I can go and look on the computer and say, okay, I need to go in right there. That has what I'm looking for today, for this year. Because it changes a little bit year to year. Food sources do change sometimes. Sometimes they prefer other things. But once again, acorns are king. We live in the land of acorn racks.
Yeah.
So it is, I've seen so many times where, people have put out feed and you see them. The deer walk right by. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Especially like a couple of places they were having some trouble with deer jumping into the horse barn and then eating the grain and then jumping out.
Yeah.
Right? And then all of a sudden she's like, why did they all of a sudden stop doing that? This little old lady, she asked me, she's like, and I'm like, well, what are they doing? She's like, well, they're just walking down, like eating leaves or something in the ground. And I'm like, well, you got a pretty good acorn year. I'm like, I bet you it's the acorns.
Yeah.
She's like, seriously? I'm like, how would they turn that away? Well, when it's acorns, it's acorns.
Yeah.
You are not getting a deer to come to anything but acorns.
Yep.
And now you think about once, like we were saying earlier, deer feed on edges. Everybody blows their leaves into the woods. Guess where there's a whole bunch of acorns? Right at the edges of all these yards.
Oh, yeah.
You're just piling up the food for them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, behind my house, I haven't hunted there since the first year I moved in, really, because I'd just been exploring, trying to figure out other pieces. And but the first year when I was hunting back there, I'd be sitting there and I'm like, my neighbor right here, I'd be seeing him go out into the woods. He's got a strip that goes out pretty far back and he's cleaning up his yard, and it would I'd be like, man, stop doing that, Barry. Don't you know it's freaking prime time right now? And it would ruin a bunch of hunts, but he's definitely dragging acorns out there, unbeknownst.
Absolutely.
And didn't even click to me until like this year. So I put a camera up on the acorns now, and I'm checking it every week or so. Just there hasn't been a buck there in a long time. It's mostly does going through. But yeah, they are. There's a whole coagulation of them there now because he's dragging them out there.
Because they're dragging the acorns out.
Yeah.
But there's like certain areas, like mostly where I hunted this year, there was no acorns in there at all.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't see the numbers of deer weren't high, but other areas, people are like, oh my God, they're like ball bearings around here, But that's how I was the year before. There was acorns just absolutely everywhere.
Last year, there was acorns everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had certain trees that I'd have cameras underneath, and every single night, those deer were going to that specific tree, then that specific tree.
Yep.
And it was just amazing to watch them actually do that. That's pretty cool to get on, because we don't often get to hunt them on the feeding end of their patterns. So we get to see the late end of it, but we don't really hunt them on the feeding patterns much, because the feeding pattern is totally night and day from, say, our behavior that we typically see around here, which is just a lot of cruising, because normally our season started later. With the season starting later, we're like already in the early phases
pre-rut
starting to So nowadays, it's a lot of people see their bucks disappear, and that's because they're finding them on those summer patterns, those feeding patterns, and then they don't know how to make that adjustment to what's next.
Yeah.
And there's areas that I go for certain times of the year
Yep.
all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
They don't cross over. There's no that this deer is going to be here. Well, what if he gets bumped? No, the deer's not going to be there. The deer's going to be over there
Yep.
because that's where he's supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I started to learn that the summer area where they've got all this browse and
They've got everything they
they've
need.
got freaking berries and flowers and they're munching that all summer long and they're safe in there. But as soon as the acorns hit, they're gone. And
Absolutely.
it's if you can you. I started to hunt this year those early places, the summer places, that first week or so, and then just knowing they're going into the hardwoods, they're going into the acorns, and then the only time you're ever going to catch it, go back into that summer spot, because I keep a camera in there all year. They'll go through there every once in a while in the rut when hot doe takes them in there.
Yep.
They'll go in there, and they also use it for a lockdown once they are on
Correct.
a hot doe.
Correct.
They go back to that spot sometimes. I noticed,
Yep.
and they'll be in there with her for 2 or 3 days.
That's right.
Which is kind of cool. But yeah, you just
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the biggest mysteries is where they take him. You know what I mean? Where do they take him during the rut? That buck forces her to go where he wants her to go.
it's so cool to
And
watch
it's
him.
just
That doe can't get away, and
No.
he'll rodeo back and forth and keep her in a spot.
It's pretty wild.
It's
And
so cool.
they're actually kind of mean,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. Just like, you ever get in an area where you see a lot of does that have the bloody ass from being poked in the side. You usually
assault.
have something that has a high tine in the back.
That's assault, man. Come on.
And they just, they walk around and they poke holes in them, until they submit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of mean, but it's that's part of it.
Yeah.
And then once that time of the year hits, though, it's so hard to get a buck to commit to you, anyways, because once they're on those does and they're in that lockdown, any other buck, you're just competition, so he's going to want to keep that doe away from you.
Yeah.
So you start laying out calls, and then you're like, he just wouldn't come in. It's like you didn't have a chance unless you were silent and you were right over him, and he came right underneath you.
Yep.
That's the only way you're gonna. It's the only way it's
What
gonna
do you
happen.
do for calling? Do you call much at all, or?
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
Let's talk
Yep.
about your bow hunting strategy a little bit. Actually, first, I was going to ask you on shed hunting, your ideal optimal day though, if you do have time and a perfect day to shed hunt, what does that look like?
Well,
Because it's been overcast. For me, it's like when it's very cloudy, or if there's a little bit of rain, then it seems like I find more sheds on those days. The sun,
most people do.
I hate the sun. It's
Most people
just
do.
the angles and the different lights.
Well, you also have to think about. I wear glasses. A lot of people out there wear glasses, and a lot of times, if I'm in a pine grove or whatever,
Yep.
I would definitely prefer it to be cloudy. I prefer everything to be wet because it darkens everything up, and then it lightens up those horns pretty quick.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, I actually don't mind the sun because a lot of places I know how to attack the woods that the sun's in my favor the whole time.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Just want to remind you guys that Huntstock and Hunt Suburbia will be at the Springfield Sportsman Show, February 24th through the 26th. Stop by our booth. We're going to be selling tickets. We've got a bunch of hard copy tickets printed out. And if you buy one of the hard copy tickets, you're going to get entered into the Woodman Arms door prize drawing for a custom one-of-one Huntstock Woodman Arms muzzleloader, which is awesome. Great promo that we're doing with Woodman. That's going to be a really unique gun collectible. Make sure you're one of the first 1,000 people to get your tickets, whether it's online or in person at the Springfield show. We will be capping the event again. Last year, we didn't quite get to a sellout. This year, we are definitely going to sell out that Saturday. So make sure you get your tickets in advance. And there's no better place to do it than at the Springfield show, because anybody who buys those hard copy tickets while you're there, you're going to get a free t-shirt with the purchase. You're going to get an extra door prize entry. And you're going to get the cool hard copy tickets that we printed up and designed. So I don't know. Some people like to keep that stuff. So yeah, come by, say hello to us. Pat Burns and I will be there. We'll have some volunteers hanging around. Porter Dickinson, I think Nate Payton, Eric Kurtubise, bunch of dudes who helped out last year at Huntstock will be at the show as well. Can't forget we're doing the 3D archery course too. It's the majority of our footprint at the Springfield show is this new concept for an archery course that's gonna, if it goes well and we get some good feedback on it, we can expand it. This iteration of it's going to be only 90 seconds. Bring your bow, bring 4 arrows. You're only going to shoot 4 arrows. And everybody who enters that and does that competition will be entered into the door prizes, whole separate thing. We've got $5,000 worth of door prizes that we're giving out, including 3-day passes to Huntstock, a bunch of those, a bunch of Onyx memberships. We got a PlayStation 5. We've got an Apple Watch. We've got some saddles and climbing ropes from Buzzard's Roost and New York Saddle Hunters. There's just a whole bunch of stuff that's going to be given away. And all you got to do is sign up and do that free 3D archery course. It's going to take you 90 seconds to complete, and it's fun. You're going to get a couple arrows released, and you're going to help us test out something that potentially could be a new sport. So come do that. If you want to sign up competitively, you can. You got to do the competitive rounds, the qualifiers on Friday or Saturday, and then we're going to take the top 8 total scores from Friday and Saturday, and you're invited back Sunday morning for the championship tournament. So 8 people will go in a bracket style face off in a bracket style competition, single elimination until there is a champion. That'll be Sunday morning. And we're going to have, trophies, no cash or anything if you win, but we'll give out trophies, and we'll give out a 3-day pass to Huntstock to the top 3. So that's cool. Again, it's free. Shoot it for fun. If you're only going to be there one day, if you kind of live nearby, or you don't you don't mind being on standby to come back on Sunday if you qualify, then do the competitive version. I just think it's going to be a lot of fun, and we definitely need at least 8 competitive shooters on Sunday. So we're taking 300 people through the course. So bring your bow, and if you don't want to bring your bow, we're going to have some demo bows there from Bowtech that we can adjust and get you adjusted and shooting accurately. With the demo bow. So. We'll also have arrows there from Easton. So, we look forward to seeing you there. And then Huntstock, again, just in general, get your tickets online. You can get them at the link in the bio. We're selling them online through Ticket Leap again. We've got a great lineup of people. Big Woods Bucks will be back. We've got Vermont Taxidermy, Rodney Elmer, those guys. They've been talking about they're just triple checking on their schedule, but it looks like they're going to be coming down. The Hunting Me guys, Will and John Altman and Josh Leach, they'll be coming down to Huntstock this year and doing some really cool stuff. And we also, the Northwoods Whitetail guys, they've been building a great group of hunters, and they're coming down. They're going to do it bigger this year. Sponsor wise, we've got Vail Camo coming in big. They're coming all the way from Kansas with a bunch of with some cool displays, and they're going to be kind of owning that 3D archery course area and doing some cool stuff on the 3D archery course. I believe Delta McKenzie and Hoyt and Easton, that whole group will be back in some way this year. Definitely, we're going to be getting some better targets, replacing the targets that got shot up last year, and making sure that every target is a pro target for the 3D archery course. Vortex is coming out this year. Sig Sauer, Mossberg. We've got some really great brands that'll see you at Huntstock. So, and then, of course, we're working behind the scenes on some really cool stuff that we're not going to announce yet. Some stuff will be surprises. We're doing more than $30,000 in door prizes again. And, if you were there last year, it's going to be everything that last year was, just with more sponsors, some new faces on the content creator side, on the YouTubers, the seminar speakers. We're going to have an outdoor classroom inside a wall tent for some, that's going to be fully scheduled just like the seminar stages. So there's going to be some cool programming going on in that outdoor classroom. We're going to be doing more stuff for kids, and some more things that we'll announce here probably in the next couple of weeks. If you want to be a sponsor or a vendor, make sure you get back to me pretty soon here. All the indoor space is sold out, and the outside, even the field, is starting to get pretty full. So reach out to me, DM me, or send me an email, huntsuburbia@gmail.com. And just can't wait for another awesome year at Huntstock, and to give you guys some more kind of in-depth announcements about what's happening at Huntstock, the schedule, the seminar speakers, all of that stuff will be coming down the pike. But make sure you get your tickets, especially if you're going to be coming on Saturday, because this year it's going to sell out. So thanks again, guys. We'll see you at Huntstock, and come see us at the Springfield Sportsman Show.
So if the sun's in my favor, I can see something from quite a ways away. My longest antler is probably 80 yards.
So do you think that sometimes the sun, if you play it the right way, the glare from the antler is what you're looking for?
Yep, because once they get later in the season, once they get bleached out, they're like fluorescent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can see them just like you can see them on those cloudy days. You could actually see one further out in the sunlight than you could on a cloudy day.
Yeah.
And if I'm short with time, I only got a couple hours at the end of the day, you got to make the most of what you got.
Yep. Do you ever bring binoculars with you?
I didn't start bringing them until 2 years ago.
Yeah, I started to dislike it.
Like
You're like,
2 years
is
ago.
that one?
It
maybe.
is one.
Yeah, it's
That's
either
what happened
yes,
to
it
me.
is,
That's
or
what happened to
let me
me.
get closer and look. Yeah.
So the first time I had brought them out a couple of years ago, I never used them before, and then a couple of years ago, I decided to bring them out, and I'm like, that really looks like just got that look to it way over there. And I picked up the binoculars, and I was like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Like, that is an antler.
Yeah.
I'm like, now I'm looking at it going, how many have I walked by? You know what I mean?
Oh, that would drive you nuts if
dude,
you could actually find out how many you walked
I don't
by.
want to know. I don't want to know. It's got to be disturbing.
I was finding myself the other day thinking, because I was like, man, I'm in big, mature buck territory. There's giant clumps of shit everywhere. There's rubs up trees.
Yeah, high off the ground.
3.5 feet off the ground, and big trees. And I was just like, oh man, I wish I could look at a pile of shit and know, like imagine you're like, oh, that was a 180-inch buck that dropped that shit, and that was 140. Wouldn't it be cool? You're like walking by and you go, 140, 180, because imagine that. Even though you've never seen a 180-inch deer in the wild, but I bet you've walked by a 180-inch deer's piece of shit before without knowing it.
Well, all right.
You know what I mean? Like, they're leaving that
Let's
sign.
think about the odds, okay? Think about the odds. You think about how many deer are out there. You think about the class of the bucks that we have around here.
Yeah.
If you think about that for a minute, what are the odds that there is a 180, a 190 in the area that you're in?
Pretty good. I feel like pretty much every town has one.
Well, to a point, but not many of them get found.
Yeah.
That we
Where
know
are
of,
they?
that
Yeah.
we're aware of,
Well,
that get brought out in the open.
That's what's insane about it is those really, really big ones.
Keep quiet.
They've just found a freaking 5-acre stamp that they live in.
Right.
That they know nothing goes in and out of there. It has to be that way because,
Absolutely.
there's some hunters that I know that are around that, when Alberini killed that really big buck, the 195.
That thing probably had the smallest range out of any of the deer in the area.
Yeah, and like people who've hunted all around that, pretty much all around that area were like, that fucking deer was from there? It's from this, someone was like, where did that deer get shot? I'm like, oh yeah, in this town X, right?
Right.
He goes, what? How is that possible? Because people think they got every inch of an area covered, but those really big ones aren't moving much.
No, those big ones do not move. Those are some of the most solitary animals you're ever going to come across.
Yeah.
That's something that is being kept on 100 acres of land.
That's how they got that big.
That's how they got that big.
Yeah.
They may venture out once in a while, but they go right back.
Yeah.
And if a big buck finds a spot like that, and it's the same thing with smaller deer. A smaller deer, A bigger buck loses his antlers. All of a sudden, the little guy's in, and I'm like, I'm the man now. Well, guess what? If you don't shoot that little buck,
You could be the man in 8 years.
he could be the man in 8 years, and he's going to come in there like he owns the place.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and to think about it too, in the suburbs where some of these bucks can be pretty visible, but
Very.
but nobody, like, not that I know of, people didn't really see that giant, like on the road or in a field.
No.
It was like you have to have camera in the woods and be right where he's at to find him.
He's
And I
not
think
moving till midnight.
those really big ones aren't going out into the field either. They're like in a suburban area. They just know.
Nope.
Yep.
They wait till all the traffic calms down and it's middle of the night. It's really dark, and then they'll go out and when they know they can't be seen.
Yep.
And even in big fields, they won't go out into big fields. They'll go to the little tiny field over there.
Yeah.
He'd rather hit 2 or 3 little fields than go out into one big field where he's exposed.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's like, if you think about it, what the hell? All the deer are pretty dumb who go out into the big fields next to a road.
Absolutely.
You can find a secluded. You don't need to eat that entire field. You can find all the food you want on a 3-acre, field that's hidden, and those bucks must figure that out.
Yeah, they I'm surprised at how many deer make it year to year. Honestly, you think about the numbers that some of these people find, of sheds. And, you think about that. There's a whole lot of bucks that get to that next year.
Well, it's just because it's so hard to find legal places to hunt in this type of area.
Absolutely.
With the laws are stringent and a lot of anti-hunters and,
old money.
The setbacks that you need. And it's just that is the recipe for them to make it another year.
That's right.
Even if you got a bunch of good hunters, and we have a bunch of good hunters in, this
whole area, yeah.
10 towns around, whatever. There's a ton of good hunters around who dedicate a lot of time, but there's not enough of them to kill every mature buck.
Definitely not. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, no, it's not possible.
Yeah.
It's too deep now. I mean, how many deer there are around here, it's just... It's unbelievable how many deer are around here. I mean, I think I came into last week. I walked into a spot. I just wanted to see if there was some deer holding or if maybe something had dropped. More or less check what the place looked like, right? And I walked into it, and all of a sudden I have 3 bucks chasing 2 8-pointers and a 7-pointer chasing around a doe. And I'm like, seriously?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not supposed to happen. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, so I walked out, but there was 18 deer altogether.
Yeah, we're probably the same place where I check on periodically to see what the hell's going on. And yeah, like I was in there 3 weeks ago, and there was 12 bucks together, and I'm glassing them all, and they're all still holding, and I'm just like, I can't believe you guys are all still holding. I think there'd be some early drops, but there's so much food in there, so many acorns in there. They just don't have the stress because they're full of acorns still.
Full of acorns. Lots of food.
But yeah, I mean, and there was a couple of 130s, 8-pointer, maybe a 130s, 10-pointer. There was no absolute giants in there and a bunch of younger ones, but it just got to look at them all. In that same patch of woods, I saw 50 deer in one group 2 years ago. Right. Does and bucks. 50 deer. I stopped counting it once the 50th one went by, and there were more. And I just don't know how many. I was just like, that is nuts. I just saw them all one by one come out of a swamp
and run away
and go by me when I was shed hunting.
It's actually 2 weeks
nuts.
ago I saw 2 bucks, 2 big bucks going at it. And I
now that's great because you're
I couldn't explain
drop them.
Well, that was my that was the funny thing is because I heard him from quite a ways away. I probably heard him from about 100 yards away.
Yeah.
And what it sounded like was somebody rattling.
Yeah.
Is actually what it sounded like. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, this guy's pretty good too.
Yeah.
And I'm going, yeah, but why would somebody be rattling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I go sneaking up, and it's 2 fields over from where I'm at. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, all right, so the tree line, I snuck up to one tree line. I'm like, okay, I don't see him yet. And I look through. I see through the other tree line and into the field. And I go walking up. And all of a sudden, there's these 2 just going at it. And I'm like, fall off, fall off, fall off. Both of you at the same time, right now.
You really want to see that in February, January. It's like, come on.
And lo and behold, the wind got a little shift. They got me. They both got onto me, and I just turned around and walked back out.
Yeah.
And they never ran away. Nothing.
Yeah.
They were still there.
At that point, you're like, you don't want to push them out of there because you're going to go check that spot
Right
now.
So last week I went in there.
Yep.
And as soon as I went in there, boom, blasted them right out the other side. And I'm like, oh no.
They were still holding.
I don't know if they were, because
That's
all
why
I saw was the 2 deer flying up through the field. And I'm like, oh no. And I'm like, 2 deer. And I'm like, right here. I'm like, ah. I'm like, I didn't bump them out of there, right? So yesterday I found one of the horns to one of them in that direction that they went.
Yep. But that's another reason why I've been bringing binoculars too, because when you jump a deer while you're shed hunting, it's always, you get so much
Wham, right
intel.
out
It's like,
there, yeah.
oh, that is a buck and he's still holding. Oh, that one's holding.
Yeah.
You know, then you can get an inventory if you don't have cameras.
You know, and the
in
funny
there.
thing is how many of them have you looked at that you like, that doesn't have antlers on it? And you put up the binoculars and you're like, oh, it does.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot.
Especially, in some of these areas where there's a lot of deer, and you're just starting to see tails, you know. If it's sunny out, you'd never really be able to tell unless they were super close to you. It's like they just got racked. But you throw it right up, I usually just see where they're going and hold it there so I can see them going through instead of trying to follow them, pick them out. Get to the opening and just let them all go through, and then you're like, damn, they're holding still.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a ton of deer still holding right now. I mean,
I'm
actually surprised.
There is.
You know, I mean, and that goes to another thing. You know, you always see the early posts. Everybody's, oh, they're dropping early this year. No, it's the same thing.
I know. Yeah.
That happens every year.
Yep.
It's the drop doesn't change.
Yeah.
The drop doesn't change. Bottom line, there's always going to be ones that are malnutrition, have a health problem, or got an injury. Those are always going to drop early. They always do. And then it gives people false hope, and they run out there, and then they get themselves all burnt out, and then they're like, why aren't I finding anything? And they don't realize that they're really, the healthy ones aren't dropping for another month.
The one I shot in December with my muzzleloader shed right when I shot him. Did I tell you that?
That's
because and then after
that's a tough one too.
After I found out, like I walked up to him and started looking. I'm like, he had a hole in his forearm. A gun hunter made a bad shot 15 days before that on the opening day of gun season.
Yeah.
And broke his forearm, so he was already stressed. He'd been living super stressed for the past 15 days, and he lost a shit ton of weight. That deer weighed 128 or 29 pounds, and he was a mature, like, I passed him in October. He walked under my bow stand at like 9 yards, and I passed him because it was so early, and I was like, there's so many other deer I want to have an encounter with this year, so I let him go, and he looked like a big-bodied mature. I was like, he's a 180, 200-pound buck, and all of a sudden he was 128 when I killed him in December. So much stress. He wasn't eating well. He felt sick to his stomach or something. Even where he was bedded, he was just kind of slow moving there. And
right.
It's crazy, and
it's amazing. It's amazing what how tough they really are.
Yeah,
I mean, they can make it through some things that would kill you or I.
Well, 100%.
You know what I mean?
I wouldn't be walking around with a freaking dangling front arm.
Right. I mean, it's amazing. It really is. I mean, geez.
All right, so that was the first hour. Well, let's talk about bow hunting now and your bow hunting strategies. So we're talking calling. So let's talk about what you do for calling and when you call. What have you found over these last 30 years hunting?
Don't do it all the time, but do it all the time. And every call has its place, if you think about it. A lot of times, bucks in the early season, you can drag them in with a can call. If you use a grunt call, they may not come in early in the season. It takes a little bit of that testosterone to build up before that happens. Rattling, I do it all the time. I rattle in the same buck 5-6 days in a row.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for another buck to come off the hill, and believe it or not,
you blind rattle
a lot of times.
Yeah.
Only because I know where the deer are.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get in position to have them come out. I can usually have them come out every time.
You know where they're bedding. You're
I
trying
know
to pull them out of their bedding.
I'm just trying to pull them out of the bedding area. The problem is that finding that magic window of when you touch the horns and they just can't resist and they come running in. Even on youth day, I've rattled in bucks on youth day, absolutely wailing horns, for my daughter and for, my son
Young
as well.
bucks only, or mature
No,
buck too?
mature buck will come running right into it. All right. One of the things that a lot of people may not understand is that once it turns to hard horn, they automatically start fighting. The testosterone is high enough.
Yeah.
Regardless of the heat and and even the food source, they start fighting. I've had two of them. I had a nice 11 pointer that I had shot. That thing didn't make it 1 week into hardhorn before he had already snapped a tine. And I'm like, come on. I'm like, the season starts, you know what I mean, in 2 days.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you just finished hardening because you had so much to harden. And you already broke it.
See, that's where you can get into those generalities where, most of the time you see if they're right when they get hard horned, if they're fighting, they're just kind of messing. They're not like aggressively going at it, right? But that's a generality, and you can say that in general. But then you have some bucks who's just there's one in the group who's a badass, and all he wants to do is fight, and he's not going to be just tinkling. He's
out for blood.
He's an asshole, and he wants to come and mess you up.
Right.
So once one of those bucks gets in and starts fighting, that other one isn't just going to lay down, and because he's used to tinkling early on, he's going to get aggressive. But in general, I do, most of the time it's like what I've seen on all the cameras. They're just kind of toying around in the beginning until it gets to late October and they really start hammering.
Right.
But again, you get an aggressive buck that comes in.
You also have to think about how many bucks you have in one spot.
Yep.
If you have an abundance of bucks in that area, they're not messing around any chance that they get to put horns to another one.
Yep.
They're not going to mess around. So if you're in an area that doesn't have as many bucks, you're more apt to see that docile behavior where they're just kind of pushing and kind of clicking and doing that. But in other areas where there is more competition, once those things are hard, those things are like, we're getting after it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And once they get beat down and beat down and beat down, then they find the order where they sit. And in those areas, a lot of times in a lot of public land, if you just hunt that area and you don't shoot a deer and you just wait to see how everything transpires, watch that woods. You're not hunting, you're watching. And you'll eventually see how the hierarchy happens, and the smaller deer come through, then the bigger deer come through.
Oh, yeah.
How long can you hold off before you shoot one or make a mistake? Do you want to risk making the mistake all the way at the end of the train where the big one lives?
Yeah.
Me, I'll probably just,
Well,
I'll wait.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is when you're waiting too, not only is it harder because now you got to fool the mature buck, but all those other ones that have just went through are all in the area too, and they're other eyes that you've got to keep tabs on where all of them are at the same time. You're like, all right, out of the corner of your eye, the first one that spikes over there behind that tree. This one, all right, he's looking the other way. Now I can make a move because I know both of their eyes are looking the other way, and that big buck's behind. You got to pick the moments when you move and draw and all that stuff. But it's fun. It's great.
It's fun as hell. You know what I mean? It's buck fever. I miss it. That's one thing I miss. That's the one thing about hunting for years and years and years. You just don't get it because you've learned naturally how to control it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. A 180, 200 walks in front of me, I'm shaking. All right? Anybody would be. If something that big came in, that's kind of a little bit of a shock to the system, especially since where we are here. Yeah. You know what I mean? That would be a shock to the system.
Well, I think if you look at hunting like any other addiction, which I think it is.
It is.
It's just anything else.
Absolutely.
Some guy that's addicted to crack or meth or whatever it is, right? You build up You build up a tolerance. Yeah, well, you are, but that comes with being addicted to hunting first too,
Yeah,
that's and then there's so many guys, and maybe you too. Like you might be liking shed hunting even better than hunting now.
I do,
right?
100%.
Like, yeah,
100%.
And that people,
I've liked that for I've been like that for about 10 years.
Yep.
I have way more fun shed hunting than I do actually hunting.
Yep.
Actual hunting is kind of boring.
Well, because my point is you built a tolerance to your addiction now.
Right.
Right. Like in the beginning, you're getting buck fever
Oh,
because it's
jacked.
like that first time you
Yep, jacked up like mad.
smoked the joint and you got really high. It's like that's because that was the first time.
Exactly.
And then everything you start to build up the
Right.
tolerance and you lose it a little bit over the years, and then you get to Lanny Benoit's age where he told me, he goes, Pat, how many more big bucks do I got to kill, man? He's like, I've done it. I just want to. I'd rather get a young guy into a position to kill a big buck now.
Right. Yeah. I actually truly enjoy I have 3 nephews, and I actually love getting those guys out there.
Yeah.
You know, and
of course,
I love seeing these guys succeed, and I love that they're starting to pick up the shed hunting hardcore, and they're all killing good deer now, and I'm pumped to see that. But I couldn't tell you how many times I've had them in trees where they're shaking like a leaf.
Yeah.
And I could wave at the deer, and the deer wouldn't even look at me.
Yep.
They can tell that nervous nature.
Oh yeah.
Is unbelievable how they can tell. So that deer saw you coming from 100 yards away. He saw you up in the tree shaking. You know, he actually noticed that. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if we give out some sort of freaky scent or whatever when the adrenaline hits you or something.
It's crazy. We just talked about that on this Todd Mead podcast too. That deer will sense your mood, because we were talking about how content creators, people like, as much as I hate that word, I'm creating a podcast so people can listen to it and get better at hunting, and I find myself filming my hunts more so that I can get stuff out. It's not to try to become famous or anything like that, but I'm putting out content because I love it and I want to pass the knowledge down. But there's some people who can get into it, and Tyler Forbes was one of them, and we talked about it on the podcast, where he jumped headfirst into the content creating game as a brand new hunter. He was like 1 year in, and he's like, I'm going to be this film guy. I'm going to film everything. I'm put so much pressure on himself that he had a terrible season that year. Like he was stressed out. He hated the feeling that he had. Like in only his third year hunting, he was like, why did I do that to myself? So last year, when he killed daggers, he was like, I'm not going to put as much pressure on myself. But I do think, like,
all right, let's face it. We all feel like less of a man when we miss a big buck or something like that. You know, you want to strive to do this, and it's a hard addiction to fall for. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Hunting and in that in general, but it's hilarious how you see these guys. You know, I love seeing a guy that he's only been hunting a couple of years. All of a sudden, he kills like a 150. You know what I mean? And I'm like, do you realize how hard it's going to be to maintain?
Yeah, keep doing that
all the time? That is a difficult challenge.
Yep.
I mean, I came from areas like, if you saw a spike horn, you were lucky back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. 4-pointer, 6-pointer. Holy crap. Did you see Stevie shot a 10-pointer over in this town?
Yeah.
Now every person on the planet's over in that town hunting. And it was big news when somebody shot a big deer. Yep. Nowadays, I'm seeing deer that are like, back then would have been big news, and nowadays they're just another. It's just another deer.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, it's amazing how it replenishes itself, and it gets bigger, and and that a lot of these new guys with the technology. Once again, I mean, those guys, God love you if that's how you want to do it. It's that's not how I do it.
Yep. But like, you just got to feel a sense of like, I'm so calm every time I'm hunting. I just feel extremely calm.
You have to be.
And I feel natural. And I'm just like, I go into the woods to feel that, that state. So I don't think I've ever felt like I'm nervous or I have pressure under myself. Oh. It's like, that is why I think I see a lot of deer, and because they don't sense me. They might smell me or see me move, but they're not sensing something is wrong.
And you're also treating it like it's just another day. It's not like, oh my God,
but I have that luxury because
I get here and I got to get there. And, because that puts way more stress on you than you ever needed. Yeah. Nobody needs to put that on themselves.
But not everybody has the luxury, and sometimes it's not even a luxury because you're sacrificing a lot of things to, spend that much time in the woods. Right. But this year is the first year I've really, because I didn't have my day job that I had for years and years and years, I took a step back from that and worked for myself, and I was like, I'm going to spend more time hunting this year. So I hunted the most I've ever hunted this year. There's a lot of stand hours, and I had the luxury of not, feeling like I gotta get something right
Yeah,
now.
I
I
have
gotta,
to,
I gotta. It was just
It's got to
another-
happen this weekend because I got all this I have to do next week.
It really was just another day.
Right.
Every day that I was out there, it was just
Yep.
like, this is what I've been doing for the
I,
last
I
5
love
weeks.
I love being up in a tree and the sun comes up and the
Yep.
world comes alive and
Yeah,
I mean that's good enough for me.
yep. It
know
really
what I
is.
mean?
It's awesome.
It's great. I mean I love doing that. Whether I see I mean I have the luxury of seeing a deer every hunt, but I don't want to kill a deer every hunt.
Yeah.
I mean that's boring.
Yeah, that would suck.
That's boring.
That would suck. I like diversity. If you do the same thing every day, the same thing, whether it's going to the same stand or you're hunting with the same implement or whatever, then that could get really boring.
Absolutely.
I like to do different things. That's why if it's windy, I'm on the ground and I'm moving and I'm still hunting because you're scouting while you're doing that. And yeah, the odds of you coming across a buck that you want to shoot
they're
while you're
low,
on the ground are much lower doing that.
Right.
But sometimes it works. And 2 years
Absolutely.
ago, it worked for me. That
Absolutely.
8-pointer up there that was hitting all of those cameras doing that 5-mile loop. I ended up killing him on a windy day on the ground. I snuck up on a bedding area that I knew was a bedding area, and he was just happened to be checking that area
At that
for
time.
does that day, November 22nd. He was going through checking it for does, and I happened to be there with my bow on the ground with the wind.
Yeah,
he
that's
couldn't frickin' hear me moving into position. I had to jump from rock to rock to get onto a boulder where there was a window where I could shoot him, and he didn't hear it because of the wind.
Because of the wind,
It was
yeah.
fun stuff like that. So
Yeah.
if it's raining,
great.
go for a still hunt with your
Absolutely.
shotgun or whatever.
Absolutely.
Like just change it up.
Absolutely. And a lot of people are afraid to do that, believe it or not. But like what I was talking about earlier, the deer will just bounce around, circle around, come back around. You don't have to really worry about putting a lot of pressure on the deer in the area because they don't have very much to go.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of land.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So they are going to be back. And human intrusion is nothing. I see dogs just tear ass off, off leash and tear off after a deer. And I'm just like, oh, man. And it happens all the time.
Well, yeah, that happened the other day when I was in that spot where those 12 bucks were. I was in there a week after I saw those 12 bucks. I'm like, oh, let me go check and see if they're still holding. And I'm just like listening to a podcast. I don't even have can't really hear much. I'm just listening to something, walking through. All of a sudden, I'm just seeing chaos. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Take the headphones out. There's tails everywhere. And there's a freaking little dog just blasting through a swamp and pushing deer everywhere.
All over the place, yeah.
Everywhere.
Yeah. That's become an issue over the past few years. A little more than
Well, you're supposed to
usual.
be. In most of these towns, you're supposed to have them on a leash, and people are letting when dogs run. I mean, I'm not a big, huge. I don't care until one bites. Comes up and bites me, and then it's an issue. But I don't know.
I've had a couple of. I had a lady walking through the woods and I'm like, oh, that's a big German Shepherd. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm just gonna stay way back over here and just let her, move along her way. And then all of a sudden, that dog hit my wind. Boom! Alerted right to me. That dog wanted the antler I had in my hand so bad.
Yep.
And that was a big ass shepherd.
Yep.
And I just kept walking. I knew that thing was inches behind me. And I'm like, this thing's going to grab me. This thing's going to grab me. I just kept walking. I ignored the dog. The lady finally got the dog. She wasn't going to control it. But she finally got it on a leash. And she had her husband on the line, and I just kept walking. I tried to ignore the situation. But I was going to get jumped that day.
A German, dude, that's the only dog that's ever attacked me. I've been attacked by 2 German Shepherds in my life, and it's just if they sense a fear or if you try to move and get away from them, then they kind of.
I wasn't making eye contact with them, and I wasn't going to turn to react towards them. So I never turned my chest towards them. You know what I mean? I always kept my chest in one direction and walked.
That's another thing, like the sixth sense thing. I had that feeling today when I was out for that 2 hours, and that dude there were 7 dogs with him. They were all off leash, and 2 big ones came rushing up to me, and I was just very calm. I remember thinking to myself, I'm just like, stay calm, because they were,
relax.
Odds are they're not going to fucking attack you or kill you, but I was just like, just be calm, man. Just
absolutely.
And I was extremely calm, and that dog got close to me, like he was going to do something, and he just kind of. He was like, all right. He turned around. He felt the
Yeah, he
calmness or
knew you
whatever, and
weren't a threat.
he just left.
Yep. He knew you weren't a threat.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And there you go. You start talking about dogs, and you think about how many times a coyote picks up an antler.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're just a dog, right? They'll pick them up and walk away with them. You
Yeah.
wonder why you don't find the set? Well, Yoke grabbed one of them and ran away with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I wonder if you go into a den and maybe they've got a couple down in their dens. You find a den, shine a flashlight down. Maybe they've just got some down there.
You
They
never
chew
know,
on.
right?
Yeah.
I do have a couple of coyote dens that I have found many sheds right there near it. And I guarantee it's one that they're, you know what I mean, that they're pulling.
Yeah.
They're pulling the sheds there.
Yeah.
And that's one spot that every year I check that spot. It's a big giant swamp.
Yeah.
And I check that because they pull them out of that big giant swamp that I don't want to have to walk through. And so in the last year's sheds that were dropped in that swamp, I usually find near that.
Damn, imagine we should domesticate a coyote and train
teach
him
him?
as a shed dog. That'd be fun.
I'm not old enough for a shed dog yet, but I'll train one day.
Oh yeah, I mean that would be fun. It's a fun activity to do with your dog for sure.
I mean, I'm 50, but we'll see someday.
Do you have spots now that produce every year for you for sheds? Like you go back to them, you're like, I know there's going to be at least one there.
Yep.
Yep.
Every year. I shed hunt 13 different towns, and every one of them, it's basically my milk run. Of there's 2 or 3 spots in each town.
Yep.
And I only go to those spots because those are the guarantees. Mm-hmm. And the guarantee is that I know that the deer is there and not being messed with. You think about it after doing this for 25 years, you start to learn all these different groups of deer. You know what they act like in that piece of woods.
Yep.
And you start to learn what they're doing. So now you go in and you just, 90% of the time I walk in, pick them up and walk out. I'm only in the woods maybe a half an hour or 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's time for that set.
Yeah.
So I'll go down there, and then I may not find that one because that one got shot or something, and there's another set.
Yep.
But the timing seems to be right there.
Yep.
But all these deer do it all at different times. They all don't all do it at the same time.
Yeah.
And even in the same piece of woods, they do it at different times. I've found sheds in people's tracks. You know what I mean? I've found them in my own tracks.
Yeah.
Because I jumped the gun, and I was there a week early. And then I said, "Oh, wait a minute! I was late," and I went back and found it.
And it's funny too that like last year, you showed me that shed that you have, and I'm like, oh, I have the other side of that one, and I looked forever for that other side that you have, and thinking, I looked in the same 40 acres back and forth, and I was like, it's got to be right here, dude.
It's got to be here.
It's got to be, but it wasn't.
I did
you
the
showed
same
me,
thing.
and it was so far away. That deer freaking carried that thing.
All right, so
away.
you saw where I found it. I showed you where I found it, right?
Yep.
Now, if you were to find that one first, what would you have done? You would have gone apeshit in those fields.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, 100%.
What do you think I did?
Yeah.
I was out there almost at night because I didn't want anybody seeing me out in those fields, even though you can walk them and nobody's going to bother you. But I didn't want anybody seeing me, so I was waiting till low light conditions to go make my run through there, to make my run through.
Yeah. Well, you just don't want people seeing you because you don't want another hunter to go, oh, what's he doing? He must be that must be a good spot or something like that. There's all these things that
seen. I don't want to be seen.
It's so hard to find the spots that are legal to hunt, so that when you find one that's good, it's like you're not hiding from you're not doing anything wrong. You don't want somebody else who knows a hunter or whatever to see you going in a spot.
That's right.
And
90% of a lot of times, I will park on a different road, walk through, and cross another road to get to where I want to go because I don't want people knowing that there's somebody in that particular piece of woods.
Yep.
So they don't see my car parked on that road. There may be a car parked a road over.
Right. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that's
and
what
I've been using that e-bike a little bit around here. I actually thought I was going to use it a lot to hunt, but I didn't. But that thing can get you concealed.
Yep, that can get you
into a spot. You don't so you don't have to leave your car if you're not going a million miles away.
Right. Yeah, I mean, technically, actually, if you think about it, if you parked, in a generalized area and you did use an e-bike, you could go a lot of places for one parking spot.
Yeah. Right.
You know, you can go to a lot of different places.
That e-bike opened up a spot for me that other big one you had the set from 2 years ago that was in the piece, you know, that we were talking about. And the big old bodies, freaking big ass 8-pointer. That e-bike was like the only way I could get into one of those spots. And it was like, it opened up. I was like, sweet, I got a backdoor access into there.
Right.
But then, come to find out, that was my first year knowing about that deer. He was only there in the summer in that spot. So he was way
killed it. Yeah.
Like, so once I figured that out, I was like, why hasn't he been here since September 15th? I haven't seen him. And so I was like, I got to go to the other side and just get some cameras over there and see if he's over here. And I got a few pictures of him there. I'm like, yeah, he's on that side of the swamp at this time of the year, and he's on the other side in the summer.
Yeah.
All right. So you started to figure it out. But I was excited when I got that. I'm like, nice. I'll be able to sneak right in there and kill that big buck. Yeah, he wasn't there.
It's not exactly all, you know, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
You know, most definitely. You know, I mean, there's areas, my first deer I ever shot, I got it out of a canoe. I went up the river.
Yeah.
Got out of the canoe, got into my stand. And of course, being young and stupid, I was, you know, with my grunt call as I'm walking up to my, you know, to my stand. Before I was probably 40 yards from my stand. I could hear a deer coming, and I'm like, oh crap, you know what I mean? I gave it away, you know. So I ran over and got up in my tree, and then I managed to get up in my tree and pull my bow up as fast as I could, and just to have that deer crest over where he could see me, and I was holding my bow like this.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, oh, crap, you know, and I just kind of leaned the bow up against me, and I'm like, oh, I am so stuck.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the first deer I ever shot. And he came up, walked by me. Now I was capable of picking the bow up, shaking like a leaf. I got an arrow knocked, and he went down. I managed to hit the grunt call, and he turned, and he came right back up. And then I got, you know, a 20-yard shot. That was the first deer I ever shot. Yeah. And that was, I don't know, how old, 17, something like that, 16, 17.
Yeah, and how many years did you use a canoe after that? You're like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's like, all right.
It's not, it doesn't work every time I bring the canoe up the river.
Exactly, okay. Right. Now you're thinking about the work that you had to do, you know what I mean, every time to lug that thing down there to get, you know, and then it changes everything, you know.
Yep.
Sure, it has its place, and it's still a great tactic, but, you know, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. So when you told me where you were coming from, where you work, so there was a place I drove by there all the time. Like, I gotta check that spot, and I went in there and it was like freaking barren. But I was like, so you must know what I'm talking about. It's behind, you know, a big industrial place, but it looks nice from the highway.
But it looks gorgeous.
Oh, it looks amazing. And then I went in there on one of those windy days where I was like, I'm not gonna sit in a tree. It's super windy, and I had learned from hunting in Anacostia before, up there when it was extremely windy, like I'm talking 50-mile-per-hour wind days. The guides up there were like, oh yeah, the deer go out into the swamps when it's super windy. They get away from the trees because they know that the trees can kill them when they fall down, so they get into the open. So my thought was that day, it's super windy. What can I do? I'm going to go to that place that I checked, which was very swampy looking, and go there when it's really windy. I walked all over that place thinking I was going to see all kinds of sign. It's just like, there's like nothing in there, dude. What the hell?
There's nothing. It's barren.
Yeah.
It's literally barren.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Couple
some
piles
area,
of crap.
There is some areas that look really, really good. And from the outside, they are just, people are like, I want to get in there. I want to get in. You walk in there, and it's such a disappointment.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it's in some of the other areas, you're like, yeah, there's probably nothing in there. And you're going, I picked up a set in there every year.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, you know, it's not about what's in there. It's all about geographic location and, you know, where these deer are and where these deer set up. If you don't know where these deer set up, you're definitely at a disadvantage if you're going to try to look for sheds.
Yeah.
You know, biggest thing I say for a shed hunter, you know, if you're new, don't give up like the rest of them did. They wonder why they never found one. It's because they gave up.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
You know, if you want to do it, I mean, my addiction started because I wanted rattling antlers. You know what I mean? And then I found ones that were big enough to impale yourself with if you tried to rattle with them. So it's like, yeah, you can't use this.
Yep.
You
But
know?
man, that's fun walking up on that.
Yeah, that was
You
cool.
get some great adrenaline from it, and
Right. And then
the deer's alive, which is kind of cool.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's like
Yep.
that deer's alive, so now you're scouting, and it's also you're hunting without the killing, and then I don't mind the killing at all. But like I said, if you do it 100, 200 times at a
it's
certain
not
point,
that-
you're just like. And Pat Burns talks about it with me too. He's like, yeah, he enjoys shed hunting more. He goes, there's going to be a point in my life where all I do is shed hunt.
Right.
And because that's fun.
Because that's fun, yeah.
It's just really fun doing it. So
Absolutely. I definitely love it.
you get in good shape too. You stay in
absolutely.
shape. You just
Absolutely.
cover lots of ground if you're doing it the right way.
Yep. Yeah, it does take a lot of ground to keep myself happy.
Yep.
You know what I mean? 'Cause I don't like something. It's like, no, I'm going to another area. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm just giving up on you.
Yep.
I don't think I'm going to find your sheds this year. So that group of deer. So, moving on. And being able to know all these different groups of deer and what they typically do all over the area.
Yep.
Think about that in 13, 14 different towns.
Yep.
That's not that easy. But that
Right.
was this year. I pounded the hell out of that one. That year I pounded the hell out of that one. That one, I pounded that just to try to figure them all out. And now it's just so easy that I don't have to anymore.
Yeah, you have to know where they are based on the food in those towns, because like this last year where I saw around this time of year, I was still walking over there and going to checking these pieces, and I'd bump into a group of bucks like that big ass 8-pointer, chocolate rack, curved. He's a monster, and I saw him last year across the street, January 25th or something like that, and he was with 5 other bucks, and I was just watching them with the binoculars, and they're just hanging out together. And the one really cool thing I've been finding is like the post rut, like in January, February, when they bachelor back up together. It's cool. It's cool.
Absolutely.
It's cool. Their friendships you can see where they're like they're no longer like really fighting. That big guy was going around,
kind of pushing you.
Kind of
around
looks
a
like
lot.
this, and he was going to all the smaller ones and just going, "Hey, that was a fun rut, wasn't it, boys?" And just kind of like tickling them a little bit, and like I'm still the boss, but he's like that was pretty fun. And you even see him like licking another buck. I saw him licking another one, and they're just like
they get weird.
It's like, whoa, we just freaking went on a sex fest for freaking 3 months. We fought each other, but now we're boys again. And
What I think is funny is when they drop, they get weird, just a lot like the rut.
Yep.
Around that time when they know that they're going to drop, and that testosterone's starting to drop in them.
Yeah.
They do weird stuff.
Yeah.
They all of a sudden just go on these tantrums, and they'll run.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A couple miles that way.
Do some bucking and stuff.
It's just, and it's hilarious, and so I don't find if I came up into one of my spots and I visually saw 3 bucks, I could honestly say I could hope to find 3 antlers, and those are my odds. I'm definitely not going to say that I'm going to go in there and I'm going to find all 6 of those sheds.
Yeah.
Because the odds are not in my favor.
Those must be places where it's not acorn reliable food. It's another food source. Because like last year, all those bucks were over there, and I'm like, dude, that's cool. Every year I'm going to go, and they're going to be bachelored up, hanging out in this area, right? But that's last year's because there were acorns there. There's no acorns this year, and there's freaking not a pile of shit over there.
Right.
So, and I'm like, where the hell are they all right now? And I'm just still trying to piece that together.
Have you found the closest acorns yet?
Over there, I haven't seen acorns like anywhere, just like anywhere. But yes, I know there are some.
There are some very
Yeah.
close by.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is find those.
Yep. Yeah, I know it.
There's 2 pieces that are very close by that are just loaded.
Yeah.
And you just have to find them.
Yep.
That's all.
Yep.
Get away from the farmland.
Yeah.
Because this is old farmland.
Yeah.
It's old land.
Right.
You need to find where there's the right age trees.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And when you look around here, this area is old.
Yeah.
And you look at some of the ages of some of these trees. These suckers are 100-year-old trees that are around here.
Yep.
And they were all built to protect the farmhouses and whatnot.
Yep.
They were all groups like that. But what you're looking for is a younger age class tree.
Yeah.
The ones that are going to put out those good fruits. the good nuts.
Yeah.
I actually know where there's 2 walnut trees. Now, I was walking through the woods. I came up and I'm like, hey, that's like a regular walnut. And I'm like, we don't have those around here.
Yeah.
And I looked up and it was actually a walnut tree.
Yep.
Every single year, I find sheds by those 2 walnut trees.
You like them.
And they're they're 3 towns away from each other.
Yep.
One of them's young, so the nuts are smaller. The other
Yep.
one's got big, giant nuts on them.
I found a lot of
Every
chestnuts. I've
year.
not seen a walnut tree, though, yeah.
Every year, I pull a set of sheds next to each one of these trees.
Yep. Do walnut trees have a consistent mass crop? Do they?
I have no idea.
Yeah. I
And
wonder if they drop every year.
I don't know if they drop every year. I've never actually looked into it. All I know is that there's always just busted up acorns all over. I mean, walnuts everywhere. So I'm just like, I don't know if. I mean, I'm sure there's got to be a mass crop like that. You know what I mean? Like some years where they have more moisture, they produce greater. There's got to be some of that. But,
Definitely.
I mean, I'm not into that much.
Yeah.
I know that all you have to do is, if you're looking for a water deer that's consistently in this area, go find those acorns. The closest acorns that you find, you're going to find the beginning of those deer.
Yeah. Well, that's how in the beginning of this year, I was like, man, it's different. These bucks aren't where they were last year. And it's like, well, it didn't take long. It was like, there's no acorns there, and there was last year. And I was like, I need to just go on an acorn scouting mission. And that's how I honed in on that new piece where you got that one shed and then the set and the big over there was acorns. And I was like, holy shit, there's a lot of acorns over here. So I spent a lot of the early season just in that spot.
Right.
And then opened new. I had never been over that area and opened up a new. And so that's cool. When the food sources change, it does force you to like, all right,
forces you to venture out.
Go look at a new spot. I learned so much this year from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's like that spot. That spot last year where I had found those sheds was just absolutely loaded. There was more acorn. That spot dragged in a good amount of deer.
Yeah.
It dragged in about 7 different bucks.
Yeah.
And I only found, evidence of 2 of them, but I knew of the other ones. But the thing was this year there was just no acorns in there.
Yep.
There was a couple of spots. There was a couple of spots that did have acorns. And it was just because the tree that was near a swamp pot or whatever, but not enough to sustain that kind of animal, that many animals in there this year.
Yep.
So now they dispersed and went back out the other side again. And now they're back up in the houses eating shrubs.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's the other thing is I'm like, how many of these freaking antlers are just in someone's backyard right now? There's so many, and it drives me nuts thinking about it.
Last year there was a shed that I really wanted. I was really after. I got a bunch of pictures of him. He was a big 11 pointer. He was massive, and I lost sleep over looking for that shed, and I was on him. And then I just said, all right, that's it. I've wasted enough time. Moving on. You know what I mean? I'm done looking. And then I get a phone call from a buddy of mine. He sends me a picture and goes, hey, look what was found up on this street. Guy let his dog out to go take a leak.
Yeah.
Came back in with it. And I'm like, no, And then I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's no way I could even get into those little chicken strips where those houses are. I mean, I'd have the cops called on me in a second.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
There's so many like that in the suburbs. They're just in someone's backyard.
Yeah, and a lot of them go unfound.
Look at this! What is this? I didn't even know antlers. Deer lose their antlers.
And some of them even go unfound.
That's
that's the funny part.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Well, I can't believe I don't know where, and haven't heard of anybody who has any sheds to Alberini's drop tine buck.
Right.
That thing's been dropping antlers for
quite
the last
a few years,
9 years, and I don't know nobody knows. He's never found them. I tried to look.
And
it's
got a characteristic that
where the hell is it? Where are those giant? They're giant too. Like those ones that stick out.
Enormous.
It's like I don't know where the hell are they? Somebody must have.
Either somebody found them, just not saying anything about them.
They're just in their living room.
And the other thing is like like using a trophy rock. If you use a trophy rock properly, you get a doe to come in and brings her fawns in. Well, those fawns are going to be the ones that are going to come to that trophy rock every January. And they're going to be on that right up into the summer. And then when water gets scarce, then they get off of the minerals.
Yep.
And now they're just eating, whatever they can for the last part of their growth. You know, you do that year for year for year, that's where the minerals work. But if you're not doing that, if you're just throwing a trophy rock out there and saying, "Oh, you know, let's see if it works," it's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You know, you have to do this generationally through it, because if you do it generationally, that female will always bring those babies right to that.
Yeah.
And then
Put it out in May and take it out in September.
put it out in January. In January, and you'll find that most of the does will be the ones that'll be going to be on
I
top
got
of
you. Yeah,
that.
right. Yeah, the does are coming.
Okay,
Yep.
and then all the way until I'll take them out and probably around May. You know, I usually pull them out around May, so because now the heat starts to get into, you know, the effect, and you don't want them, you know, on the salt like that.
Okay.
You know, during the summer like that. But it's during that fall season. Years ago, when all we used was rock salt on the roads, the deer used to always
So
come
when
down
you're
and
talking
eat the
about
snowbanks.
when you're talking about fawns are coming in, you mean they're like the 7 month old fawns?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not brand new May,
Correct.
June fawns. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So they're coming in
Because they're still with mom. They're coming
still
in
with
that
mom.
January. Yeah.
That's right.
All right. I got you.
you know, and now those are, say, button bucks or whatnot. And then now every year they're going to come to that same spot looking for that.
Yep.
And that is a substance of their diet.
Yep.
And they know where to come and get that. But I don't know, you know, I mean, does it really help with an acorn deer? Yes, it can help. You know what I mean? But you think about, you know, some of these deer that blow up just like the one that Alvarini shot. I mean, how do you grow something that big? There's something that doesn't have nutrition. We don't have soybean, you know, I don't have a 1,000 acres of soybeans out here. You know what I mean? How does that animal get that kind of nutrition? Well, it finds a way. It deals with its reserves. It keeps its health up. There are so many factors to that deer, you know, getting like that.
Yep. And there might be a bunch of different hunters and, you know, that have some minerals out at some point, right? And it's just, it's hitting all those little spots. Maybe it was.
Maybe it was.
Maybe
Who
it was
knows?
hitting minerals.
You know, who knows?
Yeah.
You know, but minerals are a big part of it. And a lot of the times in these areas, the deer can't get those minerals naturally. So it is it is helpful, you know, if you care about the herd of the herd of deer that you're hunting.
Yeah.
It is important. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, I think this year I slacked on a lot of that stuff. A couple of years ago, I put out a bunch of trophy rocks, cameras on them, deer were hitting them, you know, and I did notice the racks looked like the following year they were pretty nice.
They were thicker,
you know, and it was like, but then this year I was so busy I didn't do a lot of that stuff I did the year before. But yeah, I'm gonna do that.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
It makes a difference, but you just got to follow that schedule. You've got to do it annually. You
Yeah.
know, as soon as the season's over, you put it out. You'll get the most attraction out of it.
Yeah.
Because just like I said back in the '80s, we only used rock salt. All the deer would come down to the roads. You'd see all the trails going down. I can't tell you how many sheds you would have found in snowbanks back then.
Yeah.
Just inside the snowbanks because they're coming down and eating the rock salt.
So you got trophy rocks out right now.
Yes.
Yeah, and you go and periodically you bounce to them and see if there's sheds around them.
Nope.
No?
Nope. I don't. It's not for the reason of attraction.
Yeah.
It's just for themselves.
Yeah.
You know that
Benefit the herd.
I don't. You know every year I'll throw a block down to see what made it through the season, right? And I'll leave a camera on it.
Yep.
The chances of me picking up a shed next to a block is next to impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not. That's not how it works. The deer may come in and stop by that, but he's roaming on because his whole entire mission is food.
Yeah.
And unless you've got all the food that he could have sitting right there,
Yeah, minerals, not food.
minerals, not food.
Yep.
You know, so they'll just come by and just cruise by that, you know, and I'll throw the block out there and, you know, whenever the block wears out, whatever. You know, I'm not going to feed them all year. I wouldn't want to do that. That's just expensive nowadays. Think about that.
Oh, my God.
I wouldn't want to do that.
I know. I still have a couple of bags of corn over there because I never put them out. Because, again, this year I just didn't do it. But I like to throw the bags out with a trophy rock, you know.
Yep.
And I'd been putting them out in, like, May or June. But
Okay.
it sounds like, maybe January is the way to go.
I put them out in January, and then every year those same animals will come back. These are also animals that I hunt.
Yeah.
And I will not shoot that particular doe.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's, and I know I got friends that if they're going to listen to this, they're cracking up right now because of how old that doe is. That doe, when I first met that doe, she came in, had a buck chasing her. He was pinning her down. He was on her bad. I ended up shooting that buck. That doe laid right down right there. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, it's, time to leave. Tap, tap, tap with my arrow. Just look up at me. Stayed right there. I'm like, oh, man, all right, I'm just going to get down in front of you. Get down in front of her. I'm 15 yards away from her. She's not running away.
Yep.
She was just that exhausted.
Yeah.
I would bring my bow up, put my bow up, come back, grab the deer, drag the deer up a little ways. She would move up and then lay down and then move up, lay down and then move up and lay down. The next day I came in there, I lit a cigarette while I was there. That deer came, whoop, lay down right next to the base of my tree. Okay. 3 years after that, she brought a buck to me to shoot. I can literally walk by this deer.
Wow.
15 to 20 yards away.
She remembered how you rescued her years ago when she was like so tired.
She will let me walk right by her. Broad daylight, wide out in the open. She will let me walk right by her.
No way. Huh?
I can't shoot her because of that.
You're her protector, and she'll bring you deer.
And she brings, she
bucks.
will troll bucks by me. Yeah. The past couple years, I mean, she's just enormous. You see this thing, and you're like, where are the antlers? It's supposed to have antlers. If it looks like that, it's supposed to have antlers. It's just too big, right? But she's now vanishing during that rut. The past 3 years, I'm like, she's ready, and I'm like, I can't shoot her. I just don't have the heart to. But a friend of mine, is like, I'll shoot her, and we've hunted for her, and she's not around when, the rut kicks in like she used to.
Maybe she's past her prime.
She's still putting out 2, though.
Yeah?
She's still putting out 2, but she's old. Very old.
So let me ask you this. In those earlier years, when she would bring that buck by or you would see her, was it pretty much the same day, the same time? Because this podcast with Todd Mead, he was saying, he's like, yeah, we were talking about how he said, I have so many cameras out, I've done so much research over the years that I'll find that bucks will revisit the same area,
spot.
like on the same exact day.
Same exact day.
Year after year. Absolutely. For a couple of years. And once you find that pattern, then that third year you better be there.
That's right.
And I was like, why do you think that is? He goes, well, usually it's because there is a doe that lives in that area, and she comes in heat the same time every year.
That's correct.
So they're doing that while she's there. And then if you don't see it after that, it's probably because she's gone, she's dead, or she moved on.
Right. I'm the type of jerk that knows when that doe goes into heat.
Yep.
So I hunt her.
Yep.
For that week, and then I know that this one's going into heat.
Well,
I'll go hunt this.
If you can figure that out, that sounds like the magic sauce. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's just that you get to know these animals and you understand how the hierarchy of the does work and when they come into heat and how they work.
Yep.
Can change your hunting tremendously.
Yep.
But now think about this: you go down south and there's 1,000 does running around in that giant, massive field right there. You think you're going to time that? No. Mm-hmm. Here, we're a little bit more individuality. It's, smaller woods, smaller pieces. These does will go to these same spots all the time. And I know that every hunter out here sees the same thing.
Yeah. How are you finding the exact doe? Is it just a characteristic that she had? Like in those early years, how are you like, all right, oh, that's the same one from last year that went into heat this time? Like, well, how do you...
Trial and error of going in on them. All right, so in this particular spot, there's one that will bed here, one that will bed here, one that will bed here, one that will bed here. All the extras are down over here. These are the ones that go in heat. So each one of them uses these revolving areas. So when each one of them comes in heat, they all go into these certain areas. And then I'm like, okay, which one is it? Now I'm trying to figure, all right, it's the medium girl. You know what I mean? It's a medium girl. She's got the white spot on her side. You know what I mean? That's the one. Now that's the one that I need to look for. Now all of a sudden you try to find, all right, she's going down deep. That means she's probably in the bottom area.
Because she went into the area where she goes into when she goes into heat. And you saw her there, so you're like, oh, she's in heat now.
That's right.
That's how you know.
That's
okay.
right.
Yeah.
So I have a particular scrape that shows up every single year when the rut starts. Now I know that when that scrape opens up, it's begun. So now I have to start looking. So which buck is coming in, which doe is hitting that scrape. They all come up and do the same thing. They do the same thing every single year.
Yep.
Now I just have to sit back, hold my time, and wait for the right animal that I want. And then I'll move in after. Doesn't always work that way. And you know, like when I get the trespassers come in, they'll come in from the other side, but they're always on the upwind side. I'm always the one on the downwind side. So what that does is it changes my behavior. Instead of my deer coming from them, the deer are going towards them. So because they want to stay downwind of them.
Right.
I'm not the threat.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like
then you got to change your stand location.
Now I have to. Yeah. Now I have to recognize the pressure that it gets from outside. Sit back, just watch the whole thing, let it all transpire, then put my game plan together with what I see, and then I'll jump right on it, and then I usually get one right away.
Yeah.
You know, but that's just how it works.
Are scrapes a big thing? Do you hunt next to a scrape a lot? I mean, that's like my favorite thing in the world right now is hunting scrapes.
No, I don't. There's a time and a place for hunting scrapes, but most of that activity, if you start to hunt closer to the scrape, you're going to start to create more problems for yourself than you actually realize. You know, you're better off sitting back off the scrape and watching the scrape and trying to pull a deer from that scrape than you are sitting there hunting over the scrape. Because 9 out of 10 times around dark, there's going to be a deer near a scrape.
Yeah.
Guess who's getting down out of a tree and walking out of that same exact area? Do you want to let them know? You really don't. Especially when it comes to one that, hey, this doe is hitting this thing every single day. I'm seeing her coming in there, you know what I mean? Now, she's starting to get ready. But now all of a sudden it takes one bad interaction and then it changes everything.
Yeah.
And then she'll just go up and make a new scrape line.
Yep.
And she won't hit that community scrape anymore. She'll just do her own thing. And now you have to go find her again. You know, so a lot of people chase bucks, but in reality, you really want to hunt the does. And don't shoot them all. You know, you know what I mean?
There's a lot of does around though.
There is a ton of does. There's too many does.
Yeah.
There is too many does, and they do need to be harvested. But if you're interested in killing a big buck, I highly advise that you don't shoot one until you've gotten that big.
We got a great buck to doe ratio too here, though. You know, it's like
it's pretty fair.
It's pretty fair
compared to other parts of the country.
Go to friggin' Vermont, dude.
Exactly.
It's 5 doe for every buck, man. It's crazy. Here it's probably. I mean, I think it's very close to 1-to-1, but it's probably like 5 doe for every 4 bucks. 5 doe for every, it's pretty close, 3.5.
I guess that would depend on where you were. I guess what pocket that you were in.
In general, I mean, that's what I've been seeing. There are sometimes my cameras generally get way more bucks on them than they do does.
But that's what you're targeting.
Yeah.
You're not targeting the does, are you?
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah.
You're targeting the bucks. So
usually they're over a scrape though, or so most does are gonna come hit it. You think, but
no, because they're gonna start hitting it when their cycle kicks in. If their cycle doesn't kick in, they're not hitting the scrapes.
Yeah.
So you have to, when the cycle starts to hit, then they'll start to hit those scrapes, and then now you're starting to get that camera footage that you're looking for.
Yep.
And now is when you gotta jump on that scrape. That's why a lot of people say scrape hunting is so great, you know what I mean? Because you can get on, you can get a buck trolling down that thing.
Yeah.
But then you wait till the end of the end of November, where they come, or middle of November, when they come running right up to that scrape, hit that scrape, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, hey, I didn't even get a chance. I was yelling at him, and he didn't stop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the thing's on a mission.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, they'll almost run you over, man.
Absolutely.
So many. I haven't really had like a big mature buck almost barrel me over yet, but a lot of my friends in the last couple of years, like so many of those encounters.
Yeah.
It's like he almost ran me over. I couldn't even get a shot off on him because you got a bow and it's like he's coming right at you. What are you gonna fling an arrow? No, just get out of the way.
Yeah, you just let it slide.
Yeah, let him
know
go.
What I mean?
Yeah.
It was like this year. I had to get out of the woods. I had a buck bedded underneath me. I had no choice. And I didn't want to spook him from like him seeing me.
Yeah.
So I was like figuring, I'm like, oh, how am I going to get this thing to get up and get the hell out of here? I'm like, I want to get out.
Yeah.
You know, he came right in first light, laid right down. I'm like, oh, there's got to be something else coming. So now I can't use any calls. I can't do anything because I'm just going to alert. He's going to alert to it. It was just a little 4-pointer, you know, and I'm like, how am I going to get this thing to move? So, and I have a video of it and I can show you. Picked up my Tink 69 can and I squirted him. And it was dripping off of his face and he wouldn't leave. He would not leave. He's right there at 10 yards. And I'm like, I just started to climb down.
Yeah.
And he just got up and ran off.
Yeah.
And then I felt sorry about it afterwards because I'm like, he probably had a pretty restless night. Because he's probably getting chased around by some of the bigger bucks in there.
Yeah.
That night, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I didn't even think about that afterwards. You know what I mean? But that was one thing I had to get rid of this year. That buck, he was every single day. That thing, if I rattled, called, he would come right by, all the time.
Just getting fooled by everything.
Just I don't know. I would hunt 100 yards away, and I would see him there. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going down there today. I'm coming up over here today. You know, get up on top of the hill over here today. All of a sudden, he comes over and he lays down next to me.
There's that nuisance deer again.
Yeah, I'm like, seriously. I'm like, you really need to leave. I'm not going to shoot a young deer. I don't have any reason to. It's not. I don't need to kill something.
Yep.
You know what I mean? They have enough challenges trying to get to the next year, so I'll just, I'll let them slide.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought I was past shooting young deer, but then in Vermont, I killed that one this year. But
that's actually a decent buck.
I actually think he was a 3-year-old buck too. He weighed 160 pounds. He had a long snout. We sent the tooth in. We'll figure it out eventually. I think up there,
it's so different.
3.5-year-old doesn't look like this sometimes,
no.
unless they have crazy genetics. But
sitting on a soybean field with crazy genetics because they ain't got no brow tines.
Yeah.
Vermont does not have any brow tines.
Yeah, it is weird.
It's funny as hell.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of them laid out racks too, the ones that are just big, wide donkey racks. You know what I mean? But it's most of the bucks that I've seen come out of Vermont, at least the area that I've hunted.
Oh, so let's talk about because we've got about 8 more minutes, then we're gonna hit 2 hours. We should end it. But let's talk about the biggest. You said the biggest buck you ever saw in your life was in Vermont?
Vermont.
How can that be possible?
I thought I was seeing a ghost. You know what I mean? It was, I was up at my friend's family's camp, and I was literally on that deer for 3 days straight. And he would bed down.
So had you seen him the first day or something?
Yep. I saw him the first day. I cut his track the first day.
Were you bow hunting or rifle hunting?
No, rifle hunting. I had cut his track the first day. He turned around. And I'm like, all right, I'm off to the races. We got fresh snow. Every night we had gotten another couple of inches of snow, just like typical, cold New England, right? So we turned around and I crossed his tracks. I'm off to the races. Up the mountain, down the mountain, up the mountain, down the mountain.
So you're tracking him.
So I'm tracking him, right? I come around this big bowl. He ran around the ridge, and I'm like, man, that thing's probably standing right down in there in the wide open watching me. And I turned around and I circled around and came right up and crossed my tracks. And I'm like, yeah, he was watching me. I am on him. I'm that close to him. I stayed on that deer. Whenever he ran, I would move quickly. Whenever he slowed down, I would slow down. I never got to see him for 2 of those days. I was on him that last day. I'm coming around. I am just absolutely beat to hell because I would jump this buck out of his bed in the morning, right where I left him, every single time, those 3 days. That last day, I was coming down. I'm coming right to my truck going, there's even an hour of light left. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm beat. I gave it my best.
Throw the towel.
I wasn't good enough. That's it. I come down. There's that same set of tracks, goes right down and crosses the road right behind my truck. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no. I walked down, went across the road. This thing ran on the top of a ridge that was about 60 feet straight down. This thing's tracks were 6 inches away from the edge of this ridge, and he was running along it. And I'm like, all right, I know there's this big rock cropping out at the end. I said, I'll go take a quick look. I'm not going far. I'm done. So it's about 150, 200-foot rock, straight up rock wall, about 80 feet, 80 to 100 feet to my right.
Yep.
And I come up over the top, and I just said, I think if I can see down there, I said, I see his tracks. He ran down the hill. I'm like, all right, I'll get up on the rock. Got up on the rock, looking down, watch the tracks go down, turn, come around, come right back up. Son of a bitch, he's standing right there. He was standing right there. I pumped the first round over his back. I watched him jump off the edge of a hill. He probably landed 100 yards down the hill. I was right there, pulled the trigger, and I
he leaped off the cliff?
Literally leaped off the cliff. He landed underneath a log, a big log that was about 3 feet off the ground. He landed underneath that log.
Holy crap.
I don't know how. Kudos to that.
What was his rack like?
It was a massive, massive 10-pointer that was just, probably 13, 14-inch tines.
Jeez.
It was it was the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life. And
that's crazy.
But
they are there. Yeah,
they are there.
That's the thing. They're in Vermont. Yeah.
But the big ones don't get seen because the big ones still run away from people.
Yeah.
They don't hide next to houses like the deer around here.
Yeah.
They're like, no, I'm going to go way up on that mountain where you can't get anywhere near
That guy was willing to jump off a cliff because he startled him. He's like, fuck, a human hasn't seen me since I was a spike or whatever.
That was amazing. Two pieces
I've
of
heard
woods.
that they do that.
2 pieces of woods in 3 days. 2 pieces of woods. That was it.
Yeah.
It was 2 pieces of woods, and I never stood a chance because that's why he got to be the way he was.
He jumped off a freaking cliff.
Jumped off a cliff to get away from me. Yep. And kept going.
Yep.
So, I mean, they're incredible.
Yeah.
They're incredible.
They're awesome. And that's just why I'm addicted to learning about them and just fall in love with the animal.
That's crazy.
Just fall in love with them.
Yeah. Nothing else more fun.
Every encounter you have with them is fun. You learn something.
Absolutely.
Even the does. When I was in that piece and that dog was pushing them through a swamp the other day, I was and I've got binoculars up, saw some of them were bucks. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get in the middle of that swamp. I went down into the middle and was standing there watching this 135-inch 8. He was nice. I was just watching him through the binoculars. He's just watching what he's doing. Not a care in the world. There's a wide 7-pointer with them. There's 3 or 4 like little 4s and 6s, and I'm just watching them. And all of a sudden, a whole bunch of the does that were bumped were walking right through the swamp right at me. And I'm like, fuck, why do I always do this? Why do I stand in the middle? If I'm going to stop and observe, just get next to a big tree.
Get next to a big tree.
I tell myself
Absolutely.
I'm going to do it every time, and I'm always like caught in the open. And she's coming, and there's like a train of 10 deer coming right at me.
At you.
And a few of them were nice bucks. It wasn't the 8 I was looking at. It was like that wide 7. And I was like, man, if I was behind a tree, I would have got such amazing footage because they were coming right at me. Just would have snuck camera behind the tree like that. They would have walked from me to you, and it would have been like
great
incredible.
Right.
But I was caught in the open. They got to like 15 yards still. It was pretty close. And then the doe gone. Blew at me. She's gone. But that buck, then I went right back to the 135. I'm like, let me see just because you learn from that too.
Right.
I
Absolutely.
See, when that doe blew and she booked it out of there, I wanted to see what he was going to do. And he just stayed in the same spot, just watching everything what everything was going on. And he didn't care. He was like, I'm far enough away. They're running that way. He kept He would look over my direction to see if it was going. But no,
it's amazing how close you can get to them when they know they can't be killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the ironic part of it right there. They say that you can't kill a deer that knows it's being pressured. That's not the case.
Yep.
You really can. You really can.
Yep.
Get in his face.
Yeah.
You'll get your chance.
Be aggressive.
Be aggressive.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. That was good. We'll have to do another podcast again.
Absolutely.
I don't think we're too far apart. So, and at least in between where you live and where you work, so we can do this again.
Do it again sometime.
And let's keep in touch on the sheds and stuff because it's cool that I've got one side to that one and you got the other. If you ever kill that buck, I'll give you the other side and we can work out some arrangements like that. Or if I find a match or something that you're looking for, we can do a trade.
Trade or something.
Hey, you take this match and I'll take that one.
I'm sure we're gonna have a few.
Yeah.
I'm sure we already have a few.
Yeah. We do for sure. But yeah, man, that was great.
All right,
Nice
awesome.
to meet you. Thanks for
It
coming.
was a pleasure.
Yep, that was fun.
Pleasure, absolutely.